Good evening. I'm Brett Baer. We are coming to you tonight live from Bedford, New Hampshire, where citizens here and throughout the state have been voting all day long in the first in the nation primary election of the 2024 presidential cycle. Former President Donald Trump had, coming into this day, a commanding lead in the polls, while on the Democratic side, President Biden is not even on the ballot here. We'll go over what we're learning from our Fox News voter analysis, the early version, in just a few minutes. But we have Fox team coverage. Brian Yennis in Concord, New Hampshire, is following the Nikki Haley campaign. Correspondent Alexis McAdams starts us off tonight from Nashua with Team Trump. Good evening, Alexis.
Brett, good evening. Well, we did have a chance to catch up with the former president here on the ground in New Hampshire. He feels good going into primary night and feels like he has a lot of support here in the Granite State. But I asked him when we caught up with him if he's worried about Nikki Haley gaining steam at all. This is what he had to say. Watch.
Nikki Haley wanted it to be a two-person race, right? I mean, she got that. Do you think it's going to go in her favor at all?
I think it hurts her, actually. I think it's going to hurt her. Probably have a big loss today, but who knows?
And Fox has been on the ground for days, Brett, trying to talk with voters to figure out what issues they care about. And it simply comes down to two main things: immigration and also the economy. Trump tells us that he believes his strong stance on the border is bringing people out to the polls.
You know, the economy was big and inflation was big. It's all big. But this, I think the border issue now is the biggest.
And so how confident is Donald Trump here in the Granite State, Brett? Well, he's already talking about potential VP picks. Some of those names that have been floated could be here in this room tonight in Nashua, New Hampshire, so we'll keep a close eye on that. But how is Nikki Haley feeling tonight? Well, let's check in with my colleague Brian Yennis, who's been following her campaign. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Alexis. Well, look, Nikki Haley says regardless of the result tonight, she's not going anywhere. The former UN ambassador under President Trump says she's staying in this race even if her former boss thinks she should drop out.
I don't do what he tells me to do. I've never done what he tells me to do. Look, I mean, I've always said we'll know strong when the numbers come in. It's not like a certain number. We're going to go and fight until the very last poll closes, and then we're headed to my sweet state of South Carolina, and we're going to make the case there as well.
Tonight, the Haley campaign says it's feeling good. No campaign has covered more ground in New Hampshire with more than 100 campaign stops or spent more money with $30 million in ads. Haley says it's time for a new generation of Republican leadership, arguing Trump and President Biden are too old and too distracted by investigations. Now, Haley's campaign is betting on high voter turnout today, particularly from independents, a group with which she fares well. In a memo today, Haley's campaign urged everyone to take a deep breath. This campaign is going all the way through at least Super Tuesday. Now, before losing badly to Trump in Iowa, Haley infamously said, "Iowa starts it, New Hampshire corrects it." Tonight, we'll find out. Brett?
We will indeed. Brian, Alexis, thanks so much. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden in Virginia today to talk about abortion rights. While it is a core issue for progressives, does it resonate with a significant portion of voters across the country? White House correspondent Peter Ducey takes a look tonight.
I believe 2024 is going to be the most important election we've had since 1864.
The 2024 debut of the Democratic ticket, a rally for reproductive rights.
The government should not be telling her what to do with her body.
This event 500 miles away from New Hampshire, where President Biden isn't on the ballot and hopes to win as a write-in.
We're looking forward to a great turnout. There's going to be significantly more people voting in this primary than did in 2012 when President Obama was running for re-election.
Immigration, a top issue in nearly every poll as the administration wins a suit against Texas, allowing Border Patrol agents to cut razor wire along the border.
What Texas was doing, the governor was doing, was actually ineffective.
Congressman Chip Roy, the Texas Republican, posts on X, "Consider that we are a nation so unserious and broken that we are paying Border Patrol to secure the border, but will pay them instead to cut razor wire against most of their will/personal desire to stop Texas from trying to do what BP's core mission is."
Why are you guys making it easier for people to enter the country illegally?
I believe we are.
It took President Biden a lot longer than planned to deliver his remarks about abortion access tonight. He was interrupted by hecklers shouting about a ceasefire in Gaza 14 times. Towards the end, the president appeared to grow frustrated, and he conceded to the crowd that it was going to go on for a while because the protesters, had it all planned. And he was right. Brett?
Peter Ducey, live on the North Lawn. Peter, thank you. Let's find out what the voters here in New Hampshire are saying. America Reports anchor Sandra Smith is in New York with a look at the early Fox voter analysis. Good evening, Sandra.
Hey, Brett, super excited to bring our viewers this brand new data that we're getting from voters on the ground there. Our team's been investigating what is driving voters to the ballot box in New Hampshire. This is an early look at our Fox News voter analysis survey of Republican primary voters on the ground there. So far, our top findings on the ground do show the difference in the landscapes from what we saw in Iowa, particularly when it comes to evangelical Christians. We know Trump won that category in large part thanks to their support in Iowa, but in New Hampshire, this is a different story. Only 1 in 5 there, I say that they are evangelical Christians. Remember, this was a much different number in Iowa. It was 46% on the ground in Iowa. So you're looking at a 25-point margin there. That is a key difference. Another key difference is our findings when it comes to the share of voters that identify as MAGA supporters. Okay, on the ground in New Hampshire, that number is 49%. You'll remember it was more like 62% on the ground in Iowa. So you're looking again at a pretty big margin, 23% difference there. Now, here's a bit of a gut check question that we put to voters on the ground in New Hampshire. Who do you think's going to win the GOP nomination? Pretty simple question, pretty simple answer. Fewer than 2 in 10 GOP primary voters expect that person to be Nikki Haley, but far more, as you can see, nearly 8 in 10 say Donald Trump wins. That includes some Haley supporters. But how satisfied would they be if it is actually Donald Trump? That's the next question we put to New Hampshire voters. Most say they'd be happy enough to vote for him in November, but 1/3, 32%, said that they would not. Now, look at this. The overall satisfaction is the same when we asked that question for Nikki Haley. Taking a look at that, here's the numbers. Would you vote for Nikki Haley if she was the nominee? 1/3 said they would not support her at the top of the ticket. 64% said yes. Now, on the other side, how satisfied are New Hampshire Democrats with President Biden? This is a really big question for voters on the ground there. Nearly all Democratic primary voters said that they would back Biden in November. Now, Brett, one more key finding for you before we go was a question that we put in our survey about party identification. Our survey shows that 10% of GOP primary voters today say they generally think of themselves as Democrats. Really important stat as I hand it back to you there, Brett.
Sandra, that's interesting. We'll have more of that throughout the night. Appreciate it. Let's talk about today's primary, the presidential election. Joining us now, Fox News chief political analyst Britt Hume and Kellyanne Conway, former senior counselor to President Trump. Thank you both for being here. You know, that last stat, it tracks with the New Hampshire voter registration by party. Republicans at roughly 30%, Democrats 30%, undeclared here, Britt, big, almost 40%. And really, that number is what we're looking at, how it turns out for Nikki Haley tonight.
Exactly, and you see the party identification of those who actually voted in a Republican primary, overwhelmingly Republicans, much more overwhelming than the numbers might suggest if you have all these independents or undeclareds, as they call them, vote here in New Hampshire. So that, you know, at least looking at it at first blush, would not be good news for Nikki Haley, who, you know, she ran in a lane very different from what Ron DeSantis tried in Iowa. He failed, but he ran basically in the same lane as Trump and was bidding for the Trump voter who he believed, I think, unfortunately for him, those Trump voters were ready to turn away from Trump. They turned out not to be. Haley presumably had a different lane and a better chance perhaps here, and this was a good state for her. If she doesn't do well tonight, well, you begin to think, well, where do you go? You know, how can anybody beat this guy in this cycle?
Right. On the flip side of that, Kellyanne, is that if you have, let's say, 320,000 roughly voters today, you had 100,000 roughly in Iowa, that would be 420,000 overall who have voted. And someone could say, who was a pro-Nikki Haley person, well, why not keep the fight going, even if you lose by 5, 10? It starts to get ugly at 15.
Sure. Well, the short answer, Brett, is that there probably isn't enough anti-Trump vote to beat Donald Trump. New Hampshire has a tradition of shock and awe. They like to say that they're the protest vote, but I believe the protest vote this year for New Hampshire Republican primary participants is not Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or Chris Christie. It's Donald Trump. He's still seen as the insurgent outsider. He's still seen as the disruptor. And that is the advantage he has that he can couple with a presidential record now. Now, sure, less than 500,000 in Iowa and New Hampshire voting, as you correctly point out. But these are the first 2 states, and it looks like Donald Trump is on track to perhaps get a majority of the vote again if you look at everybody's polling. That is truly dominant. Look, I think the DeSantis point is an important one. People kept making excuses for him, giving him a mulligan. They never gave one to the world's most famous political golfer, but it was, wait, he didn't announce yet. Wait till the money comes in. Wait till he starts campaigning. Everybody waited, but Ron DeSantis was chasing people whose hearts already belong to someone else. And we women know that's a bad thing. It's a flawed strategy from the beginning. But look, I think in the case of Nikki, I think, look, for Donald Trump, his opponents were confident. His opponents' donors were certain. But the voters still seem unconvinced. I think if she can turn it around to go to South Carolina, then she's talking, but there just doesn't seem to be enough as a Republican nominee within the Republican constituency for her.
Britt, you look at the Fox News voter analysis, the #1 issue here in New Hampshire is the #1 issue we saw in Iowa, immigration. I went to a couple of rallies for the former president. You know, for all the talk about all the controversial stuff that he says, the campaign is pretty disciplined on that immigration issue, and he hits it every time, a lot of time.
And he has a record on it. You know, whether it talk about needing more money, policy changes, and all that. He, without any policy changes, without any new legislation, without a lot more money, was able to get things basically under control at the border. So that's enormously in his favor because of the prevalence of the issue. And what's striking about that issue to me was for a long time it didn't appear that it was really emerging as an issue. You saw the scenes down on the border and you think, my God, how can we tolerate that? It was a ticking time bomb. And I think now it's gone off and it redounds to the benefit, principally in this race, of Donald Trump.
And quickly, I mean, the President Biden has to be looking at that as a major weakness in his campaign. As you start to paint a general election, eventually we get there.
That's right, Brett. And actually, he's got Democratic governors and Senator John Fetterman and others now raising the alarm bells and saying it is a crisis. We don't care if you call it that or not, but it is a true crisis. 8 million people is larger than the population of about 40 of our states. So people know what they see, not just what the Democrats say. Look, when Donald Trump elevated immigration in 2015, 9 years ago, it was about 3% in the polling. But he figured it's also an economic issue, it's a fairness issue, it's a sovereignty and security issue. Now it's a top issue because Biden has completely ignored it. He needs to go back down there. He needs to have Kamala Harris go back down there and stop pretending that abortion is going to be the #1 issue in the general.
Something tells me the former president will probably be down on the border sometime soon as well. Kellyanne, Britt, thank you very much. See you later. In other headlines tonight, the man referred to as Hunter Biden's sugar brother told House impeachment investigators he voluntarily loaned money to help a struggling friend. A transcript of the interview with Kevin Morris reveals he met Hunter at a Biden-Harris campaign event November of 2019, started helping him cover his bills just weeks later, and paid the majority of the $1.4 million the younger Biden owed in federal back taxes. Meantime, a federal appeals court in Washington has denied former President Trump's request to toss the gag order on his speech related to special counsel Jack Smith's election interference case. A judge first imposed the partial gag order in October, blocking the former president from making statements targeting Smith, his staff, witnesses, and court personnel. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gerskovich was visited by the U.S. ambassador to Russia last week. Lynn Tracy says Gerskovich appeared in good spirits despite circumstances. She said he remains grateful for the support he continues to receive from family and friends. Gerskovich was detained in March of last year on espionage charges he denies. He spent his 300th day in custody earlier this week. Stocks were mixed today on weak earnings. The Dow lost 96. The S&P 500 gained 14. The Nasdaq was up 66. When we come back, the worst tragedy for Israeli troops since the war with Hamas began. We'll take you live to Tel Aviv. And later, what voters here in New Hampshire are saying about the first-in-the-nation primary. Before that, a history lesson.
It didn't really become the primary as we know it until 1952.
And do you think that since that time it's evolved into kind of a pride?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that really defines the state's political culture. It means the world comes to us every 4 years. It makes our lives interesting.
Tell me why 1952 is important.
Sure. In 1952, you had an open nomination for the Republican Party. One of the leading candidates was Robert Taft.
Yeah, I'm voting for Mr. Taft because I think he's the best qualified man in the country for the job.
He was very isolationist in his view of the world, and the more moderate, more internationalist wing of the Republican Party wasn't really happy about that. They were trying to find somebody who could oppose him, and they thought of Eisenhower. Well, Eisenhower wasn't sure he wanted to run, so they actually put his name on the ballot without his permission, and essentially told people, look, you like Ike, right? Vote for Ike.
I'm for Bob Taft, so I'm going to vote for Ike.
And it worked.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we can have peace with honor, reasonable security with national solvency. I believe in the future of the United States of America.
Turkish legislators have endorsed Sweden's membership in NATO. That lifts a major hurdle on the entry into the military alliance for the previously non-aligned country. Hungary is the lone remaining NATO ally that has not yet ratified Sweden's accession. Russian missiles struck 3 Ukrainian cities today. At least 7 people were killed there. Officials say this barrage included more than 40 ballistic cruise and anti-aircraft and guided missiles. The United Nations is saying it appears that this is the heaviest bombardment since early January. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing what he calls absolute victory following the death of 21 Israeli soldiers in the deadliest attack on IDF forces since the war with Hamas began. Correspondent Alex Hogan is in Tel Aviv with the latest tonight.
It's the deadliest attack on Israeli forces in Gaza since the start of the war.
We share the sorrow of their families for the heavy loss and know the pain is unbearable.
The IDF says 21 were killed by Palestinian militants when a grenade aimed at a tank took down 2 buildings, crushing the troops inside. The military claims it's now encircled the city of Khan Yunis, but the UN warns Israeli attacks hit a shelter for displaced civilians, killing at least 6 people. As the death toll soars, the World Health Organization reports that strikes on healthcare facilities are rising as well. And in Jerusalem, families of the hostages are demanding action.
We saw that only through deals the hostages came back alive.
Among the families are Liran, Eli, and Omri, men fighting to bring home their little brothers, Ziv, Gali, Idan, and Evyatar. They're begging the Biden administration and governments of Qatar and Egypt to mediate. According to a senior Egyptian official, Hamas has rejected Israel's proposal of a 2-month ceasefire in exchange for the Israeli hostages. But when a deal is on the table, the brothers say their role is clear.
Our effort in Israel is to press on our government to accept a deal,
no matter what the deal is.
As tensions boil in the Middle East, new tonight, the U.S. says it launched airstrikes on 3 facilities in Iraq used by Iranian-backed militia. This follows repeated attacks on U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria. Brett.
Alex Hogan in Tel Aviv. Alex, thanks. From immigration to inflation, we hear from New Hampshire voters as they decide who will get their vote this primary. Also, we talked to 2 of the lesser-known candidates on the ballot here. But as we go to break, a trip to a very special political stop. Roby's Country Store here on the banks of the Merrimack River is an historic landmark in between Concord and Manchester. If you want to talk politics, this is the place to do it. It's been happening for decades. There's a plaque next to the counter commemorating Jimmy Carter's stop here in 1975. Now, this place is owned again by long-lost cousins of the original owner. And if you want to talk politics or have a good burger, Roby's Country Store is the place to do it. Special report continues after this. Welcome back to New Hampshire. Before they headed out to the polls today, we spoke with a few voters about what's on their minds as they made their final decision.
Don't complain about what happens in a general election if you don't play in this primary. It matters.
It is a more than 100-year tradition.
Every one of you is going to cast the most important vote of your entire life.
That could reveal an upset winner.
13 good people all wanted to go and do something right by the country, but one by one, you saw them leave.
Or solidify a front-runner's dominance.
We're going to soon be leaving New Hampshire with a big victory, right?
With 2 left in the race.
So as we're sitting here, Governor Ron DeSantis is dropping out of this race, which is kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
New Hampshire voters.
I've been paying attention to politics for longer than probably you've been born.
Know the importance.
It's an honor, definitely.
Of their role in the primary season.
We take it very seriously.
Most voters in this state are registered independents. Many have voted for candidates from both parties.
So you've kind of evolved, and you think the Democratic Party's evolved?
The Democratic Party left the people. The people aren't leaving the party.
Alyssa L. voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and later changed her affiliation to Republican.
They're going too far extreme to the left, and I just can't support their ideals at this time.
Alyssa says she likes several candidates this election cycle, including Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, and Donald Trump. But with just the former president left out of her top 3, she still has some hesitancy.
He's obviously up in the polls. So what's your concern about just being able to beat the President Biden?
Yeah, well, he lost, last time in 2020, so I'm kind of concerned that his reputation is going to be an issue.
Because they did mess with me, now they've got us and me for 4 more years. Think of it. We'll drive them crazy.
A lot of people are saturated with the whole Trump drama.
Yeah. So Nikki Haley's running on the fact that she points to polls that she's up over Biden. That's one of her closing pitches.
I just feel as though it's just not her time. She's just not firm enough on a lot of her issues.
New Hampshire voters are unique. They do their reading, they do their research, and they make the best vote.
Marianne Vallis is a bookkeeper and property manager from Bedford.
What other things are issues that you care about?
I have 4 sons that live in the area and a stepdaughter, and I worry that they can't afford to buy a house. And I worry about the border issue, huge.
She says Nikki Haley impressed her in that first debate.
I am generally a pro-life person, but I think there needs to be some exceptions. And when she pointed out that we would never pass that throughout Congress, it just struck me.
Marianne says New Hampshire takes its job seriously.
What's amazing here is that there's so many people that are passionate about this choice. Like, you all take it seriously, it seems to me.
New Hampshire has had a long-standing tradition. It's part of our Constitution that we have the first in the nation primary, and that's why the Democrats are missing the boat, basically.
Yeah. Tim Collegier believes former President Trump is the only one who can win.
I've never been to a Trump rally.
Well, thank you very much. This is a crowded place.
But he draws them like it's unbelievable.
Tim has voted for President Trump in the past 2 election cycles and plans to support him once again.
If you're leaning towards Trump, you think he can win a general election? You're pretty confident of that?
Well, yeah, I thought he was going to win the general election last time. I guess people are just upset with his actions and his attitudes. I think with all these criminal indictments throwing at him, you always vote for the underdog. I vote for the underdog. And to me, he's become an underdog. So we'll see.
So you think it actually kind of unites people?
I think it unites people. I really do.
Tim says he understands why the former president has faced criticism, but also believes Trump's policies were much better for the country.
What's the issue that most drives you?
You talk to a lot of people, and they say economy and immigration. I liked a lot of things that Donald Trump did back the 4 years he was here. He may have spoken too loudly and too much on Twitter. He upset a lot of people. But as far as what he did for this country, I liked it.
We first met Donna Morin 8 years ago.
It's been a while. We came in 2016, 2020. 2016, you supported...
I kind of like Chris Christie and Jeb Bush.
Go Jeb! Oh, so embarrassing, yes.
And then 2020, we came back.
Are you settled on one?
I am.
And?
I'm settled on Pete Buttigieg. I'm very excited about him.
And so this time, as you look at it, where are you?
I am definitely going to be supporting Nikki Haley.
Similar to candidates she's supported in past elections, Donna likes Nikki Haley's more moderate policies.
She wants to stay strong by helping Ukraine. That's vital. I just feel like she has a lot more honesty to her.
Always spoken in hard truths, and I'm going to do that with you tonight.
Whatever the result Tuesday night, Donna says it's a lesson for her students.
So you teach American government.
I do. Love it. Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
And the kids, are they into this primary process?
Yeah, a lot of them are really into it. And they better vote on Tuesday because a lot of them are 18.
Our thanks to the voters there. As we told you earlier, President Biden is not on the ballot here in New Hampshire. DNC chose South Carolina to start officially, but that leaves a bit of an opening here for someone who is on the Democratic side, Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips.
What are you thinking about today? What needs to happen?
Well, first of all, what I'm thinking about is what a beautiful practice of democracy here. It is so unique. So few Americans know how seriously they take it here. It's kind of almost the first interview for the entire country.
Yeah.
And I think we should treasure that. My party has disenfranchised Democrats here. They have literally said, this is meaningless. We won't seat your delegates. I'm here to bring a little excitement to this race, because gosh knows we need it.
Could this be embarrassing for President Biden?
Well, I think it already is. And it saddens me because I respect him. I think he made a terrible decision. And I think our parties right now are actually diminishing this practice rather than elevating it.
I saw that you went to a Donald Trump rally and you talked about that and kind of the message it sent, the people you met.
And I thought, I'm going to show them how I lead, which is to run to the fire. I didn't expect to be treated nicely, to be honest with you. But my goodness, I'll never forget it. 50 people I spoke to, hospitable, friendly, kind, a lot of high fives, a lot of statements of glad you're in this race, showing some courage. And I got to tell you, a diverse crowd, many of them there for the first time.
What do you have to see?
Well, I've been a long shot most of my life. So if we're in the 20s today from zero, that's a heck of a statement. Either way, I'm going to keep going. I have to introduce myself to the country, at least give voters a choice. Neither party should be pursuing a coronation. That's what mine is right now. I think that's dangerous. Our country was founded on competition. I have spent so much money on this campaign, I have nothing left in my pockets.
If it doesn't work in the long run to get the nomination, what's the message you want to send to President Biden and the administration?
The message is that when you stay around a little too long, it poses great risks, not just to your own legacy, but to this country. Competition is good. And if the president would just come out and debate, face voters, answer questions, do a town hall, show up, at least show the Americans that are going to vote that you're ready for the task. That's what I'm doing. I think the contrast alone might be just what he and the country need.
One of the least known of the remaining Republican candidates on the ballot here in New Hampshire is Ryan Binkley. He's a businessman, church pastor from Texas, virtually no national profile, but he is on 30 state ballots. That is no small feat. And he is suing, actually, to be on another one. And he did outperform some better-known politicians in Iowa.
They're saying, who in the blank is Ryan Binkley?
You're a businessman, but you're a pastor.
Yeah.
And what happened? You just got a calling? That...
You know, I did. You know, in my heart, I really felt it. I know that many of you may not have met me yet. If I would have told you 9 months ago, Brett, that there would be a guy standing here today with you, and he made it past a vice president, a couple governors, a few billionaires, I don't know, congressman, a senator, would you have taken that bet?
You're on a lot of ballots. It costs a lot of money. Sometimes it takes a lot of signatures. There's people wondering, so why are you going to this level of effort?
You know, Brett, if you had a child that's in a burning building, and this is what I see America today, with the debt and the division, with no plan out, and you got a small % chance at getting them out, you and them out alive. Do you run in?
Yeah.
Or do you walk away?
Yeah. You have a lot of individual donors. Where's all the money coming from?
Well, primarily a lot of it from me. I've self-funded quite a bit of it, but we do have 82,000 donors.
It's not a money-making operation. Can't be. Money's going out the door, right?
Oh, absolutely. But you know what? I just believe in it. I'm fighting for your kids, my kids,
You know what the Trump people are saying? He's trying to get on all these ballots to be the Cornel West, the RFK Jr. to the Republican side. So evangelicals who are disaffected from Donald Trump have another line to vote for.
I'm not trying to disrupt anything. Listen, America can't wait 4 years. Our generation, yours and mine, will be known as the generation that prospered the most but sacrificed the least.
So you don't think Donald Trump is able to tap into those issues?
Well, I don't know. He's been around for many years, and has he? So you look at our big cities. I'm from Texas. We lost every major city: Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin. For the first time in 65 years, Fort Worth. This was like the Alamo of conservatism in North Texas.
Dear God, help us.
You're going to keep going?
Yes. You see the voices. Are we connecting to the multicultural communities that are growing, the changing electorate of our nation? We're not. You know it. I know it. And I'm telling America, not every Republican is like that.
We'll see what happens tonight. Coming up, our all-star panel breaks down the first-in-the-nation primary. Plus, Bill Hemmer is at the Big Boy for a preview of tonight's returns. Coming up next. Let's find out what history and demographics tell us about what to expect when we start getting results from here in New Hampshire. At the primary, my colleague Bill Hemmer at the touchscreen.
Hey, brother.
We're busy tonight.
We left the monitor in Des Moines, okay? So it's still falling out.
Yeah.
But we shipped a new one up here,
Nice.
so this is 2.0. So come on over here, and I'll paint a little broad strokes for you based on what we're seeing here in New Hampshire tonight. We start on the Republican side, big story on the Democratic side. Brett mentioned that a moment ago. I'll come back to the minute here. But this is what's on the line, okay? 22 delegates at stake here in New Hampshire. We pop on in here. You're going to see the colors populate around 7:30, 8 o'clock tonight, all right? But you've got a little bit of on the screen already because Nikki Haley won 6 votes at midnight last night. Dixville Notch, a tiny little community up here in the northern part of the rural part of New Hampshire. It's a tradition in the state. She went 6-0 against Donald Trump earlier today. This going back 8 years now, okay? This is the last contested Republican primary in New Hampshire. Donald Trump rolled over John Kasich by 20 points, won all 10 counties, and we'll see whether or not he still has that force tonight as well. On the Democratic side, let me click on over here. See this? Delegates at stake? 0. Now, there is a long explanation for this, but the DNC and Joe Biden didn't want it. They want to start in New Hampshire. They want to start in South Carolina. New Hampshire said we're still going to do it as our state constitution, and that's the reason why you have 21 Democrats plus a write-in candidate tonight in New Hampshire. Now, we're going to be able to get an idea around 8 o'clock tonight how many wrote in Joe Biden's name, so watch that throughout the night. As I wrap this up, Brett, so far we are, okay, so this is the ball game now. Trump got 20 delegates in Iowa. Ron DeSantis dropped 2 days ago, picked up 9. Nikki Haley stands at 8. It's 1,215 needed for that nomination. That's the ball game. You mentioned history.
Yeah.
If Donald Trump wins in New Hampshire tonight, he will be the first Republican in a contested primary to go 2 for 2 in the first 2 contests, Iowa and New Hampshire, since Gerald Ford in 1976.
He will also be the only person to win 3 New Hampshire primaries.
And there's that, too.
History in the making.
Dig it.
Bill, thanks. We'll see you a little bit later. Let's bring in our panel. Josh Kraushaar is Fox News radio political analyst. Trey Gowdy, former congressman from South Carolina. Fox News senior political analyst Juan Williams. Okay, Josh, you've seen some of the voter analysis going in. What strikes you? What strikes me, first of all, is, and we talked about this with Britt, is immigration for the second time in a row, top issue.
Yeah, immigration. You just have to look at the campaign ads here in New Hampshire, and one of Donald Trump's most effective issues is hitting Nikki Haley for not being tough enough on illegal immigration. And I think he's gotten some traction in the final weeks of this campaign by showing he is the most hawkish candidate here on immigration. And it's been a really interesting contrast between Trump, who has the base, he has the MAGA base, and that makes up, about half the Republican vote here in New Hampshire. But he's also been able to make some inroads with more traditional Republican voters, independent voters, who also consider immigration as a very significant issue for them.
Yeah, Trey, what are you looking at tonight? Obviously, it's a big pot of undeclared voters.
It's a question to me of whether never-Trumpers really are never-Trumpers. People who vote for Nikki Haley, will they come around in November? Or conversely, if she's the nominee, will MAGA voters support her? It's also what I'm going to be listening for. The victory speech was conciliatory in Iowa. What kind of tone does the president? I mean, there aren't enough Republicans to fight among themselves and still win in November. So is there going to be a coalescing, or are they going to take this thing to my beloved home state?
Right. And the question is how far that goes. You know, does one a second place within 10 points? Does that give the momentum? Does the donor base say, we're going to stick with you, Nikki Haley? We don't know the results, but if that pans out, 10 points, does that move her on?
Well, I mean, that's what's the whole stake here in New Hampshire is, does the race go on towards Nevada and South Carolina in specific?
I mean, Bill Clinton in '92 was the comeback kid in
right.
second.
That's right, but it was because he was in second, right? But I think that tonight, as people are watching, I think you should pay attention to whether or not she, you know, last night I said to you, can she get within 5 percentage points? I think the tone that we are hearing is more, you know, maybe 10 points. But even if she does that, and I might add, she's getting an infusion of money. She's done very well in the last few days in terms of fundraising. She had a big addition in terms of a political action committee after Iowa. Her ads here have been strong. It looks like there's real arguments that she's been making. On foreign policy, there's a lane for her. There's a lane for her on fiscal restraint. There's a lane for her in terms of saying, oh, Trump is chaotic, he lies. But how much, to get back to Trey's point, how many of the educated, more urban Republicans who, both in Iowa and here, say, we're not sure about Trump, are they willing to come home once we get towards November?
Yeah. Secretary of State told Brian Yennis that this turnout looks very strong. They made a prediction of anywhere between 322,000, 325,000. Doesn't know if that's going to hold up. If it does, it would be historic. And that would bode well, at least for Nikki Haley tonight.
Yeah, I mean, look, she needs to get a lot of independent voters. She's hoping that some Democrats even cross over, anti-Trump Republicans, Democrats cross over into the Republican primary. So she needs big turnout.
Well,
from
you're
people.
saying the undeclared that are Democrats.
Correct, people who don't register as Democrats but tend to vote for them. So she needs to win over the lion's share of moderates, independents, less partisan voters. Donald Trump has, you look at the polls, Brett, Donald Trump has a sizable advantage with the partisan, traditional rank-and-file Republicans. So Nikki Haley needs to expand that electorate tonight to win over the moderates and independents.
And Trey, on the Democratic side, we could have an interesting story. Could have an interesting storyline with a write-in candidate. You've got Dean Phillips, who's working the crowds. Could be embarrassing for the president, possibly.
It could, and then he'll have to come to South Carolina like he did once before, and Jim Clyburn will drag him over the finish line. I think he's going to wind up being the nominee. I don't want to spoil the ending, but I think he's going to wind up being the nominee. But this is an unnecessary story that, you know, somebody with approval in the 30s probably doesn't need right now.
Well, you know what's interesting to me here is the tremendous sentiment that says, we don't agree with your Middle East policy. Now, I know Republicans are going to say, well, no, we think he's been trying there, but boy, there are a lot of Democrats who don't buy into it.
There is a progressive movement here to write in ceasefire on the write-in instead of President Biden. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Up next, we'll take you behind the scenes here at the Fox News headquarters in New Hampshire. Be right back.
Hi, I'm Sally. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a flight nurse on a helicopter that specializes in trauma. I've been doing flight nursing for 24 years. As you get older, your brain slows down, and I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to keep up. I heard about Prevagen from a friend. I read the clinical study on it, and it had good reviews. I've been taking Prevagen now for 5 years, and it's really helped me stay sharp and present. It's really worked for me.
Prevagen, at stores everywhere without a prescription.
I told myself I was okay with my moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis symptoms, with my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. But just okay isn't okay. And I was done settling.
If you still have symptoms after a TNF blocker like Humira or Enbrel, Rinvoq is different and may help. Rinvoq is a once-daily pill that can rapidly relieve joint pain, stiffness, and swelling in RA and PSA. relieve fatigue for some, and stop joint damage. And in PSA, can leave skin clear or almost clear.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal, cancers including lymphoma and skin, heart attack, stroke, and GI tears occur. People 50 and older with a heart disease risk factor have an increased risk of death. Serious allergic reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant.
Don't you think?
Diarrhea is common, maybe or plan to be. I'm making my own way forward. Ask your doctor about everyday.
All right, welcome to the bed.
Structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Huh. We're more different than I thought.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
All right, welcome to the bed. All right, welcome to the Bedford Village Inn. We've essentially taken over this whole property. Here's the makeup. Melissa, can you say hi? Hello. And we've taken over this entire area and made it TV sets, a bunch of them, that we're going to show you behind the scenes very quickly. As we go past here, this is the coffee area, we'll go into this room here. This is the big set. This is where Hannity is. This is where they have Fox News Sunday. The Fox and Friends couch is put in here. Harris Faulkner does a show here, or has done it. And then we have other sets as well. So follow me. We'll go outside and show you around. Okay, so you pop in between the buildings. This is obviously the set you see behind us in the big box. I'm going to take you over there now. A little fast forward. Come on, follow me. Guys, how are you? Hey, what's going on? I'm going to pop up here. This is what we call the Fox box. Let's take you inside here. And this is our studio. Oh, you got the door there? All right. Inside here is our studio for the election coverage for Special Report. You can see through the window, it's kind of like a snow globe here. And this is the billboard where Bill Hemmer will be, getting all of the results in through the night. I'm going to take you to one more spot. Follow me. Oh,
Brett,
Jesse Waters.
in about 5 minutes.
You can handle the cold, man. Look at you.
I know. I don't need to bundle up.
Yeah.
I'm from New England.
I'm going to get you one of these Special Report jackets.
I don't need any of your free stuff. Right?
I see ya. Okay, so this is the area that we have our dining for all the staff. Right in here, dinner, behind the scenes, lovely spread. And then come on down this hall. All right. And this is our newsroom, our home away from home as we finish up the New Hampshire primary. Thanks for watching. Oh, wait, Harris. No, we won't show you. We won't show you. Hold on. She's got curlers in. It's okay. We'll see you tonight for special coverage. Fair, balanced, and unafraid.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingram. This is the Ingram Angle from Washington tonight. The first set of polls just closing in New Hampshire. Of course, President Trump looking to deliver a knockout blow to Nikki Haley and take full control of the GOP nomination. But Haley says no matter what happens tonight, she's in it for the long haul. We're just minutes away from getting the first results, plus my angle on what's at stake in moments. But first, tonight we have reporters at the Trump and Haley headquarters. So let's go right to Alexis McAdams, who's standing by at Trump's watch party. Alexis, what are you hearing?
Hey, Laura. Well, we were able to check in with the former president today on the ground in New Hampshire as he stopped at a polling location. And to put it quite simply, he is feeling very confident. He thinks he has it in the bag here in New Hampshire. He thinks the Granite State is on board. Why? Because he believes they like his border policies. And that's something that we've been talking to with voters, Laura. What do they care about? The border and the economy here, really hitting home on immigration in this state. And Fox has also been talking to voters on the ground who say those are their top issues, and that's what's pushing them to the polls. How confident is President Trump, Laura? Well, he said he's already looking right at vice presidential picks. Many of those people could be here in the room tonight, like Vivek Ramaswamy, who I just saw walk by, and some other people who could be here in just a short time. So to say the mood is upbeat would be an understatement here. So we'll have to see as those votes continue to come in and how things play out here in the Granite State, Laura.
All right, Alexis, we'll check back with you. Thanks so much. Next, let's go to Nikki Haley's headquarters, where Brian Yanis is on location. Brian, what are you hearing from the Haley camp about a number that they hope to hit or a threshold that they hope to hit tonight?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been trying to get them to confirm the reporting out there that they're trying to hit a 47% number with independents. That's not a number we've been able to confirm with the campaign. But the reality is, Laura, is that they are looking for strong voter turnout, and it appears they are getting that. The Secretary of State's office tells me that they're very confident that there was very strong voter turnout today. It doesn't reach the estimated 322,000 with about 100,000 independent voters. We'll see. We'll find out shortly. But the Nikki Haley campaign knows that they need those independent voters to swing heavily their way to offset any of the gains that former President Trump is going to make among registered Republicans in this state. And you know, Laura, we've been in New Hampshire for the last week, and it has been all about retail politics for Nikki Haley. She's made about 100 stops. They've been at bookstores and at restaurants and at schools. Her largest one was 1,200 inside of a school auditorium, but it is a sharp contrast to the types of rallies and politics that Trump has been operating here in New Hampshire. She has spent more time and money here than anyone, and the tone, Laura, has very much turned against the former president. That has been striking. She's particularly been pounding on his age, saying that he is too old and comparing him to President Biden. But it's very fascinating, Laura, because that is a tight rope to walk here. She's telling people in this state, she's told them that she is not a moderate, yet she says she is the candidate for everyone. And she's also walking the tightrope when it comes to criticizing the former president. There was one moment inside of at one of her stops where a senior citizen said, "Hey, there are senior citizens in this room," when Haley was going off on the fact that there are two 80-year-olds running in this race, and America doesn't want it. So a lot of things to look at tonight, particularly if she can really walk that fine line between being that moderate and conservative for the voters here in New Hampshire.
Brian, thank you so much. And now, apropos of this conversation, the last gasp of the Never Trumpers. That's the focus of tonight's angle. All right, whatever the final tally tonight is in New Hampshire, Donald J. Trump is well on his way to being the GOP 2024 nominee. Now, this is nothing personal toward the former South Carolina governor. As our reporter Brian Yanis just said, she's been working hard in the Granite State. But if she decides to drag this out through South Carolina or beyond, Trump will still be the nominee. It doesn't matter how many donors or paid flacks tell Nikki Haley otherwise. This is not her time. Now, it's funny to watch the corporate media, though, because they're so predictable. All she needs to do is outperform in New Hampshire, whatever that means.
Haley, on the other hand, hoping to shatter expectations, telling reporters she's in it for the long run.
Nikki Haley is making what could be her last stand, betting her hopes on crushing the numbers of undeclared voters and doing better than expected with Republicans.
Well, it's a nice try, but guess who sets the expectations? The corporate media. So the press is so desperate to keep the appearance of a horse race that they had this banner up on MSNBC pretty much all day. I love it. 100% for Nikki Haley. 0% for Trump. Okay, of course, it's Dixville Notch. You know, they had that at the bottom of the screen.
All 6 voted for Nikki Haley. 4 of the voters were registered Republicans, the other 2 undeclared.
You see Haley out to a quick 6-0 lead, courtesy of Dixville Notch, where all 6 voters had their traditional midnight vote last night.
Dixville Notch, obviously, just after midnight, all 6 votes in that place voted for Nikki Haley.
Okay. Newsflash. You need to win in order to chalk up delegates. And as someone who spent 4 years and 4 winters in New Hampshire, I'll tell you this. If she cannot win a primary in a state like New Hampshire, where the independents can vote, where she has the governor on her side, and where social conservatives have little influence, where exactly does she plan to win?
As much as y'all like to sit there and say Trump's going to have this, the truth is you're not acknowledging that 70% of Americans don't want a Trump-Biden rematch. Trump has lied on TV and spent millions saying, I want to cut Social Security, which I never said I would.
I saw that ad yesterday.
Yeah, but you guys haven't talked about it.
You keep saying coronate, lie, not tell the truth. What do you say on the couch? I'm really wondering why you think we're the enemy.
Because I've looked at the media, look at the political class all coalescing and saying everybody needs to get out.
Of course, I understand that it has to be disappointing to learn that in most Republican voter strongholds, they don't agree with you on some key issues. The so-called mainstream GOP has had, what, about 8.5 years to convince the voters that Trump was wrong about China, wrong about immigration, wrong about foreign affairs, wrong about the deep state. But despite their best efforts, people like McConnell, Romney, Christie, and Mike Pence, they couldn't convince the voters to turn away from the America First or populist agenda. In fact, if anything, the less support Trump got from the so-called moderates, the more voters' views solidified in his favor. So why has this happened? Why don't the voters trust the GOP leadership and the so-called mainstream? Well, it's not hard. The Senate Minority Leader right now is working with Chuck Schumer to squeeze out more money for Ukraine and essentially keep the border open, calling it a big border deal. Even though poll after poll shows that the GOP voters do not want either. No wonder they don't trust the party leadership. You can't blame them. The GOP, the Biden administration is literally suing right now to stop Texas from enforcing the border. Yet somehow Senate Republicans think Biden can be trusted to enforce any new laws? It makes zero sense. And the voters know this. Now, Haley isn't asking for my opinion, and she's miffed at this network, but it's kind of obvious. If you're a Republican who is seen as standing defiantly against your own voters on key issues, you're probably not going to be too popular. Republicans want a candidate who reflects their views, and of course, they also want to win.
I changed my vote this morning. I went, instead of voting for Haley, I voted for Donald Trump
You
this
changed
morning.
your vote this morning.
Yeah,
Why?
sure did. I think the primary's over. I think that, Mr. Trump's going to be our next candidate.
Well, smart guy. Even Politico yesterday called Haley's New Hampshire bid the last stand of the Never-Trumpers. And the GOP chair in New Hampshire, Jennifer Horn, just flat out said it's all over. Now, Never-Trumpers do see New Hampshire as a make-or-break moment, right? We know that. But as I said, wishing it were different doesn't make it different. So now what's at stake? Why is this happening? Well, we know tonight that you're going to hear a lot of chatter about continuing to keep this going on. But in the end, we're seeing why Donald Trump ultimately won this. He won this because he won the heart and soul of the Republican voters. And that's on issue after issue, after indictment after indictment. And doesn't matter what Nikki Haley believes at this point, doesn't matter if she decides to stay in. She'll either be part of the solution for restoring prosperity and peace to the United States, or she'll be part of the problem. I hope for her it's the former, and that's the angle. Joining us now from the Hoover Institution is Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, it was striking that even Politico called this the last stand of the Never-Trumpers. Having spent a lot of time in New Hampshire, 4 very long winters and 4 years there, this is kind of tailor-made for Nikki Haley-style politics.
Yeah, it is. I don't know quite what the strategy is. It's got to be one of 3 things. Either she's going to get a lot of media exposure and pose as a vice president candidate possibly to Trump and say that she'll win more independents to the Trump cause and she will lose MAGA people who won't vote for her. Or maybe she feels that she's got to be an inert candidate and just be there if Donald Trump, by some weird circumstance with his legal exposures, is in trouble and she's there as a backup or tag-along candidate. Or if she really believes she's going to come within 10 points and then be a viable candidate, it's kind of a catch-22, Laura, because to be such, she's so welcomed in people that are antithetical to the MAGA agenda, which is a Republican Party, that it's almost a suicide mission, because even if she were to win in some weird circumstance, she would have the same effect that Romney and McCain had, as you remember, in 2008 and 2012, where 8 to 10 million people on the Republican side just didn't vote. Whether we like it or not, that's probably what would happen if she was even viable. But by bringing in independents and all this money that is on the left, really, it's kind of a counterproductive. I think it's not viable. So I don't know what her strategy is. I guess we'll find out when we find out how close she came. But if it's over, if she's not even within 10 points in New Hampshire, I don't see any of those three strategies working.
Well, Nikki Haley is deciding to do what a lot of sort of moderate Republicans do on the campaign trail. They kind of lean in on the gender card. So they say they're not for the DEI victimology, but then when push comes to shove, they're into the victimology. And so she uses phrases like fellas a number of times as a political ploy kind of against her GOP rivals, Victor. And of course, then she said, but I fought to remove the Confederate flag when I was governor of South Carolina. Okay, are we still talking about the Confederate flag? Who's even talking about that? But she feels like she needs to kind of prove her establishment credentials over and over again. And I don't think that helps her ultimately.
No, I don't think so. I think the Republican Party is on record that your superficial appearance is incidental. It's not essential to who you are. And we all treat people on the basis of our character, content of our character. So you can't have it both ways. You cannot be kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and say, I grew up in an area where I was subject to racial discrimination, yet the South was a racist country when I was growing up, and I was treated kind of badly, and then I was first woman this and this. And whether you like, I can understand her logic, but what she's doing is playing right into the identity politics. And that's one of the fundamentals of the Republican Party, that DEI is an abomination, and you don't touch it. It's kryptonite, and we've got to get rid of it because it's destroying the country. So you can't just dip your toe in that water and think it's going to win you independent votes or Democrats that will cross over, because it's a toxic ideology. And I think everybody knows that. They won't. People will bolt if she runs on that. They won't vote for that.
Well, Victor, and you see other Republicans who've challenged Trump in the past and even disagreed on key issues, but they kind of stay within a space that's considered acceptable by most GOP voters. You think of someone like Rand Paul. He went really hard against Trump, right, in 2016, but then he figured out a way to be part of the solution and the conversation. And that's smart, and others did the same thing. But there's just no path backward if you keep going down this road. Questioning Trump's mental competence and age? Really?
No, it's not going to work, because for whatever people say, this is not the Republican Party of Romney or Bush or McCain. This is a populist movement, and it's against the bicoastal elites and the subsidized very poor, and it's the middle class. It's the upper middle class, and it has certain values about closing the border, national sovereignty, fair rather than free trade, not getting in optional military engagements in the Middle East, et cetera, et cetera. And when you try to bring in people that don't believe in that agenda, even though that's what the majority now believes, and it's been successful, as we saw from 2017 to 21, I don't understand. We've been there, done that, it didn't work. And it hurts the Republicans. You don't want a bunch of billionaires saying, this is our Romney candidate or this is our McCain candidate. And I don't know what other, I guess she feels there's no other alternative for her, but it's not good. And it's not good for the future of the Trump candidacy. At some point, she needs to either do well in New Hampshire, her idealistic primary. It's a perfect primary for her. And if she can't do that, then I think she should face reality. And I know it's early in the primary, but unless she's running for vice president, or as a backup in case something happens legally to Trump, I don't see the pathway at all for her, other than just trying to restructure the Republican Party that is never going to go back to what it was.
Yeah, I know. Even some of the big donors today with Cavuto were saying, you know, there's not a huge sign in New Hampshire for her, then it's time to wrap it up. So we'll see how much they're going to open their pocketbooks after tonight. Victor, thank you. All right, the first results from New Hampshire are just now starting to come in, and it had a surprising issue at the top of voters' mind that could actually swing tonight's results. Sandra Smith, Pete Hegseth, they're there, and they're next. The first results from New Hampshire are coming in. It looks like we have just 4% of the results so far. You're going to see the numbers come up at the bottom of the screen. They'll be updating, and Sandra Smith has exclusive new information from our very cool Fox News analysis of what voters are thinking in New Hampshire tonight. Sandra, do tell.
Hey, Laura, good to see you. Brand new information for our viewers right now, our Fox News voter analysis survey. It has been in touch with more than 1,800 Republican voters there in New Hampshire. And so far, here are some of our top findings. When it comes to the top issues for voters on the ground there, it is a very similar story to Iowa. It's not the economy, it was immigration. #1 for voters on the ground there. 42%, it tops the list as the most important issue for them facing the country today. Fewer, 31%, feel the economy is the #1 problem. All the other issues, including foreign policy and abortion, look at that, they fall in the single digits. So why all this worry about immigration? Well, we also asked voters about that as well. When it comes to immigrants in the U.S., 69% of New Hampshire Republicans feel immigrants are hurting the country. 28% think that they do more to help. Next up, we also asked that question about U.S. involvement in other countries and what the appetite is for more or less involvement. As you can see here, 52% of GOP voters want the country to take a less active role, while 30% think our involvement around the world should stay as it is. There's little appetite, as you can see, for increasing our efforts around the world. That number's at 16%. Now, closer to home, when it comes to family finances, something everybody cares about, our financial situation. On the money front, just 12% say that they feel like they are getting ahead in today's economy. Most, nearly 6 in 10, say they're merely holding steady. Unfortunately, 28% say they're falling behind on paying their bills and saving money, which leads understandably to our next finding on GOP voters and change. This is also a really telling response from voters on the ground there. 54% say they want substantial change in how the country is run. Plus another 29% say they want complete and total upheaval. Laura, I remember we looked at this with you with Iowa. You put that together, you suddenly have 83% of voters in New Hampshire who say they want at least substantial change in how the country is run today. And that is a really interesting takeaway from what we've seen so far.
Wow. Well, Sandra, the idea that immigration in New Hampshire is the #1 issue is staggering.
Yes.
That tells you how far this issue has moved into the interior part of the country. Sandra, fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, we haven't seen the text of the so-called bipartisan Senate border bill, but senators who we have been talking to have no idea what's in it either. But it's obvious whenever it does come out that it's only going to make the crisis at the border worse. And Kamala Harris is now admitting that it's all about amnesty and we should just be focusing on equity.
The solution includes putting resources at the border to do what we can to process people effectively and putting in place laws that actually allow for a meaningful pathway to citizenship. Dreamers have been treated very badly. The negotiations that are happening right now, I hope, are going to be directed at solutions that are genuinely focused on fixing the problem, including all the equities.
Pete Hegseth joins us from the GOAT Bar and Grill in Manchester, New Hampshire. Okay, I know that place, Pete. Are the patrons at the GOAT worried about the border?
It seems to be issue #1, Laura. You're exactly right. This is a country music bar here. It's a Republican bar here at the GOAT in Manchester. And when you talk to folks, that has been a #1 because of the 3 years of the absolute abdication on our southern border, which they believe is clearly intentional. And that's why we've seen it at top the list. And I think, Laura, that bodes very well for Donald Trump, who, as you pointed out, made this a signature issue when he first ran in 2015 and 2016. The rest of the party has been playing catch up all the way until now. So if that holds, could be a good night for Donald Trump. Real quick, we're here with the New Hampshire Republican Party. Just had a chance to talk to the chairman. They're getting unofficial results in right now. I just took a look at his phone. One ward in Manchester, 1,200 votes Trump, 800 Nikki Haley. They said that was a center-right district. Another ward had 600 Trump, 300 Nikki Haley. Again, unofficial. That was more center-left. So he said roughly 3-2 on exit polls internally on the party, but those are notoriously tough to read, Laura. It's going to be an interesting night. Will it be a big win or a thin win? I think that's the margin we're looking at. And while everybody should be watching the channel, because I'm fixated on this screen right now with the percentages and where they're moved, while you're watching the channel, tune into Fox Nation. We're having a watch party behind the scenes. I'm here with Tom Bevan and Ben Domenech, the director of the National Institute of Politics. Kilmeade might stop by, Jimmy Fela. We're going to kind of watch along with you. So we'll be watching you, we'll be watching Fox, and we'll be having a conversation on Fox Nation. Pull it up on your iPad or your iPhone as well.
Oh, what a lot of fun. Pete, thank you so much. All right, the first polls have closed in New Hampshire, and the results are beginning to come in. We're going to go check in now with the surrogates from the Trump and the Haley campaigns. So buckle up. That's next.
Mr. President, Haley says that she's staying in through Super Tuesday.
I don't care.
Is she a threat to you?
No, and I don't care if she stays in. Let her do whatever she wants. It doesn't matter.
Nikki Haley wanted it to be a two-person race, right? I mean, she got that. You think it's going to go in her favor at all?
I think it hurts her, actually. I think it's going to hurt her.
Donald Trump, very gracious and sounds pretty confident as results start coming in from New Hampshire. The former president, he's looking ahead, doesn't seem to be holding any grudges as we head toward a likely 2020 rematch against President Biden. Now, South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman is backing Nikki Haley, and he joins me now. Congressman, I keep hearing that if Nikki Haley outperforms expectations, that it will be a sign that she should stay in for the long haul. Could you explain that for us tonight?
Yeah, well, first of all, Laura, we've had Iowa, and this is the second primary. Had the caucus in Iowa and then the primary. Are we voiding the other 48 states? Nikki Haley started out dead last out of 13. She's now one of two that's left. And, I really take issue, and I love your show, but I heard your monologue. For you to say that she's part of the establishment, for you to say that she's never Trumper and if she's not part of the solution, part of the problem, that's not for the media to say, Laura. Let the voters decide. It's competition.
Well, first of all, yeah. Ralph, first of all, I appreciate you and back at you. I have great respect for you. This is nothing personal about Nikki Haley. But in pretty much every national survey, way beyond New Hampshire, that a state that I know very well because I lived there years ago, but I lived there. If you can't win big in New Hampshire when you're Nikki Haley with all the billionaires' money you got and all the money you're pouring in, if you can't win in that state, then where are you going to win? And that my point to Nikki Haley is you should be part of the future of the party. There's no reason she shouldn't be. But she's just prolonging the obvious when clearly the nation wants a substantial change. And the substantial change is with the guy, it looks like, and maybe you're right, maybe there'll be this magical surge for Nikki Haley. But it seems to be that the people would like a matchup from the guy who's getting hounded by the deep state and the guy who actually took us through peace and prosperity against Joe Biden and his globalist handlers. And look, the numbers are what the numbers are. I mean, you guys can get mad. I get it. It's not fun to lose. It's not fun to put in all this time and money. I get it. But explain where she's going to win big if she doesn't win big in New Hampshire.
Well, let's see how she does in New Hampshire, and let's see where she goes from here. I can tell you for all the news media and the pundits, just to say that basically what you said, that just fires her up. Look, in every poll, Nikki Haley beats Joe Biden by a substantial amount. Donald Trump is very close, but not to the margin that Nikki Haley is. And second, let me say this, Laura, if Nikki Haley was everything y'all are saying and Donald Trump is, she's a globalist and all that, he endorsed her to lead America on the United Nations as ambassador. Was he wrong? No. Donald Trump was right.
He endorsed a lot of people that ended up, obviously highly critical of him, and they've parted ways. Again, nothing personal, but just because he endorsed her, people endorse people all the time, and then they part ways. Sometimes they get back together. But that doesn't, I mean, you've been around this game a long time. You know how it goes.
Laura, he didn't endorse her. He picked her. She represented the United States. But look, I look on, and I don't take it personally either. That's why, you know, everybody, it's interesting, the people that endorse Mr. Trump. If you look back when he ran in 2016, Jeb Bush had 7 huge endorsements. Marco Rubio had 6. How many did Donald Trump have? He had the Lieutenant Governor of South Carolina, who's now governor. So it's not who the endorsements is, it's the person. Nikki Haley is the only candidate that has risen, and let's see how it plays out, but let the people decide.
Well, of course the people are going to decide, but it's certainly not decided, Congressman, by the fact that there's national polls that show that Nikki Haley will win by a larger margin. The Republican primary is what it is. I mean, she spent more money than anyone in Iowa, right? And she came in 3rd. She couldn't even beat Ron DeSantis, who was obviously really having struggles at that point. So I get it, and I get the fact that all these billionaires, you know, are lining up. They're going to have big fundraisers, and that's nothing wrong with that. They should have their say as well. But, I mean, at some point, if you can't win in a state like New Hampshire, the voters are sending you a message. And, again, we'll see. There could be an amazing surge, and it'll be fascinating and probably really, really interesting to watch. Final word, Congressman.
Can I say one other thing, Laura? I watched Joe Biden in North Carolina. He can't count to 1. I'm not sure he's going to be the candidate in this race. So a lot of things could change. Polls go up and down, and I look forward to seeing how New Hampshire is, and we'll see how it works. We'll live to fight another day.
Congressman, do you think that Donald Trump's too old to be the nominee? Because that was Nikki Haley was indicating that in various appearances.
Well, look, if airline pilots have an age limit of 65, are you at your top of your game at 80? I would question that versus somebody who's 52. Secondly, he's only going to get 36 months in office. I know it's a 4-year term, but it's politics the last year. 36 months to turn the damage that this administration has done, I don't buy it. We need 8 years, and she will enact so many of what President Trump was right on, which the border, you keep mentioning that, she's going to start deporting illegal aliens the minute she's sworn in, and many other things to get this economy right.
Well, we'll see if the voters of New Hampshire and beyond think that Nikki Haley's stronger on the border than Donald Trump. And, sir, you know, you could be very well right, and I could be wrong, but I don't think so. But it's great to have you on. All right, Joe Biden may have skipped his own party's primary contest, but a new report says that the president and his campaign's inner circle are watching tonight. We're watching these results coming out of New Hampshire very closely because they're saying it's going to give them a much-needed jolt of energy with voters and donors who don't want to see Trump back in the White House. Joining me now live from the ground in the Granite State is Caroline Leavitt, National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign. Caroline, I don't know if you heard Congressman Norman, who's a surrogate for Nikki Haley, but he rejects this idea that Nikki Haley is a globalist, which is a criticism from conservatives of Nikki Haley compared to Donald Trump. And you say?
Well, that is the truth. Nikki Haley is an open border globalist who is bought and paid for not just by the Republican establishment, but also by Democrat donors that are fueling her campaign. Her campaign is run by Democrat staffers here on the ground in New Hampshire, and they've made a very vocal and concerted effort to have Democrat voters infiltrate today's primary. And with all due respect to the congressman, Laura, he couldn't answer your question about what Nikki Haley's pathway to victory is. That's because she's never had a practical pathway to the nomination. Never has, never will. We are 100% confident that President Trump will have a big victory here in New Hampshire tonight, just as he did in the great state of Iowa. Don't forget, Laura, this is the first state in the union that propelled President Trump to his historic epic defeat over Hillary Clinton in 2016. The voters here have a long and deep connection with President Trump, and our campaign is fueled not by Democrat operatives and donors, but by grassroots patriots across New Hampshire and across this country who believe in President Trump, love this country, love this state, and want to make America great again.
Well, we're going to see what happens by the end of this hour. We'll see where we are. And Caroline, thank you so much. All right, next, Bill Hammer is at the big board, standing by with the latest results coming out of the Granite State. Don't go away.
families of immigrants that are terrified tonight. This was a white lash. This was a white lash against a changing country.
That's a pretty extraordinary thing to say. If you have a son in the Marine Corps and that you don't trust the commander-in-chief. The people in the military defend the Constitution.
We never knew this would befall us. This has never happened before to our country. This is history. God bless America.
Oh, man, that still makes me laugh from 2016 election night, but not much has changed for the liberal media. Now, that was the meltdown of, almost 8 years ago. But let's fast forward 8 years or so, and the talking heads are worried about what will happen again if Trump starts winning again.
You got to question the Trump supporters about their incoherence, Willie Geist, on how to win an election.
What he's offering is what he both sort of inherently offers and now more and more explicitly offers, which is, if you pick me, that'll be the end of politics. And you won't have to deal with politics anymore. He's going to act like a dictator.
He's got a team of weirdos and wackos who thought this thing through. You thought that last ride was bumpy? This is going to be insane.
Chris Bedford, Common Sense Society senior fellow, joins me now. Chris, they were dumbfounded by the populist spirit in the United States. People say enough, middle-class wages aren't going up, the border's open, we want America first. They were dumbfounded. People actually wanted to have a country. And now, almost 8 years later, apparently they haven't learned anything.
They haven't learned a darn thing because they haven't tried to. I mean, I was initially surprised 8 years ago when I went to New Hampshire, where I was at exactly for this night, and talking to different working people who were saying that they were in between Donald Trump, who's considered a kind of a conservative Republican, and Bernie Sanders, the left wing of the Democratic Party. That didn't seem to make sense until you realize that there's so much pressure building in the United States amongst people who felt like neither the GOP nor the Democratic Party was listening to them, that the Uniparty was just going on as normal. There was a lot of pressure building, and I don't think any of that pressure is released. In those couple of years, you'd hope that people would start to, who do this for a living, would try to figure out where the anger is coming from, where that resentment's coming from, where the popular surge is coming from. Why are people upset? But there's been no even attainment. And you see it not just on the left, but on the right. I was going through National Review's top articles today, and they're complaining, well, the voters aren't always right. They're wrong all the time. It's an absolute meltdown over there, just like you see on MSNBC.
Oh, yeah, I remember the Never Trump entire issue that National Review put out. The collector's edition, yeah, the purple one. But, we noticed in the Fox voter analysis, which is fascinating, it's 1,800 New Hampshire primary voters, and it tracks with what we've been seeing from other polling outfits over the last year or so. People want less foreign intervention. They want more border enforcement. And, they want to be back on the trail of peace and prosperity. And, I mean, it's not really changed. But this has been the case for years and years and years, has it not, Chris Bedford?
It has, but the noise was so much between 2016 and 2020. The distractions were so common and the flip-out so insane that it was kind of easy to lose track of just why Donald Trump had brought so much more hatred down on him than Mitt Romney or George W. Bush or other people really had. You look back in retrospect with the noise behind you and say, what did he do? Until COVID, the economy was doing great. The United States was the first president and many presidents who hadn't launched the United States into any kind of wars abroad. The border was actually, he proved that D.C. was lying. You could actually secure the border. It wasn't just an impossible thing to do. He pushed back against the elite classes, but I think it's because he was the first Republican to not just be controlled opposition. Now, he certainly had his failings, and they were on display, but hopefully his team may have learned from some of those, because what America needs is no more controlled opposition, and that's what the left hates.
Okay, the results are coming in. We'll get to an update in just a minute. But I want to play something from on MSNBC where they're really trying to grapple with this idea of whether they should cover Trump at all. So Chris Hayes is kind of going back and forth on this. Watch this.
It's kind of an unsatisfying attack line, just to put my cards on the table here.
In her stump speech, she says he's chaotic, fairly or unfairly. The unfair stuff, she says, are the politically minded
cases that he's defending in court. Some of them, anyway. She points out Manhattan, for example. But that's a pretty unsatisfying answer, too.
Yeah, well, of course, you know, the MSNBC hosts want Nikki Haley to attack Donald Trump more, but that serves their purposes because they want to help Biden. But, of course, it leaves Nikki Haley and John Kasich and Jeff Flake and Liz Cheney land, does it not?
It does. And a lot of these folks, they're able to justify completely breaking from their jobs to be informers or their jobs to be statesmen, their jobs to report the news. They justify all kinds of things because they think of themselves as some kind of historic soldiers in their little fantasy book. They're fighting the Nazis in Normandy. But, you know, when it actually comes down, we've seen since 2020 that these are the people who call for your churches to be shut down and your priests to be arrested. These are the people that separate you from your children and your wives and your parents in the hospital. These are the people who try to keep your children out of school. So they think of themselves as part of the resistance. And Donald Trump and all of his supporters as something evil. They use that to break down every single ethical guideline there is. But at the end of the day, they're cowards.
Well, and just for the record, Chris Hayes, it wasn't a soundbite, it was a quote. He said, the feedback I get from viewers is, why are you covering Trump so much? Because he's the most singular threat to the American constitutional order since the Civil War. That's my answer to that question, which is, I think, absolutely true. So they're going to be in a pickle here, right? Because what, are they not going to cover him at all? But then they're like, well, he's a big threat to democracy. There's never going to be another election. He's a dictator. I mean, so they're caught between a rock and a hard place. Anyway, Chris, I had to get that. Thank you so much. All right. The last polling stations are just about to close in New Hampshire. Bill Hammer joins us now at the board with some early results. Bill.
Hey, Laura, good evening to you. Just taking a glance at this now. It's too early to call. As you mentioned, some communities are still open, about 20 towns throughout New Hampshire. Some large, some medium, some small will close at 8 o'clock, and then maybe we'll see when we get to make a call. Here's where we are right now. Just before 8 o'clock East Coast time, Donald Trump has about just under a 10-point lead at 9.6. Raw vote total there is more than 5,000 votes. So we scanned the map here at 17% of the estimated vote in. You move down here to Hillsborough County, Laura. This is right along the border with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's the largest, most populated county in the state, 1 out of 10, 30% of the state population here. Donald Trump with an 11-point edge there in Hillsborough County. His campaign is going to like that a lot. We're looking at some of the individual towns right now, trying to find out where Nikki Haley right now is showing some strength. The capital city of Concord in Merrimack County, there are some numbers coming back favorable to her in that town. Concord is the 3rd largest city in the state of New Hampshire. If I could just pop out here for a moment and just try to gauge, these numbers kind of flip right now, Laura, and sometimes they change quickly without noticing, so we'll keep a track of that. There is another race happening tonight, right? There are 22 delegates on the line in the Republican race. There are 0 delegates on the line in the Democratic race, but here's what's happening right now, and this is how we're tabulating this. We've had our voter analysis team out in New Hampshire for 7 days trying to figure out what the strength is for Joe Biden. He is not on the ballot, but there are 21 Democrats who are on the ballot. If you support Joe Biden and you're a Democrat or undeclared independent and you show up at the polling station today, you have to physically write in Joe Biden's name. We believe among the votes tabulated so far that Joe Biden is just shy of 60% when compared with the other 21 candidates, including Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson, some of the better known there. Here's the process, Laura. When you write in a name and you submit that ballot, it's considered unprocessed. But in each community, in each town, in each county, once that name is confirmed, it's moved to the process section. As of right now, we have just flipped again here, 13,262 processed ballots for Joe Biden. That's the way we're tabulating this tonight. I'm going to go back to you in a second, but let me just flip it back to the Republican side, just where we were, 17%, too early to call, a difference of about 9.4 percentage points between Donald Trump and Nikki Haley. A couple minutes away, they'll all be closed, Laura. Back to you now.
Wow. Bill, thank you so much.
Sure.
And we are moments away from the last polls in New Hampshire closing at 8 p.m. Eastern. Katie Pavlich, Byron York are here. Both are Fox News contributors. Byron, you know, we don't know where this will end up tonight, but your take on this, this idea that no matter what happens tonight, this is a long battle ahead for Nikki Haley, and she's in it to win it.
Well, Nikki Haley spent the whole day saying that because she was asked why, you know, how long she would stay in the race. But candidates always say that. A lot of it does depend on the result tonight, not whether Donald Trump wins, because Nikki Haley has not been claiming lately that she's going to win. She only claimed that she would do better than she did in Iowa, where she lost by 32 points, kind of a low bar there. But if she does come in a way, in a place where we all think it's kind of close, like a single-digit result, then she probably will have some support among her donors to keep going.
Now, by all indications, Katie, the voters of New Hampshire are rejecting the Biden economy, the Biden border policy, foreign policy, even what Biden and Harris were touting at what they billed as the first joint campaign event of 2024 today. Watch this.
I ask the people here in Virginia, are you ready to make your voice heard? Do we trust women? Do we believe in reproductive freedoms?
Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
Don't mess with the women of America, Katie, unless you want to get the benefit. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it's going to be abortion, and democracy is ending if you don't vote for Joe Biden.
Well, Joe Biden also gave a shout out to who he said was the real governor, which is Terry McAuliffe, who of course lost to Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin, who is currently the governor of the great state of Virginia. But it's clear the Democrats are going to run on abortion. They've been successful in a number of ballot initiatives. It's something that does get their base out. But overall, with independence and the issues that are coming to the top of polling are immigration, illegal immigration in particular, and the economy. And as we've seen all over the country, even Democratic mayors and Democrats are very concerned about the resource management problems they're seeing now that Joe Biden's open border policies have come to their cities, crunching budgets, kicking their kids out of their schools, and requiring them to have their taxes increased as a result of their hospitals and public services being overrun. So when it comes to what's happening in New Hampshire, Donald Trump is the one who's been campaigning very hard on the issue of illegal immigration. It's what brought him into the White House the first time. And so voters tend to gravitate towards him on those issues that Republican voters in particular see as their top issues going into the primary process.
And Byron, what we're also seeing is the fact that voters in New Hampshire are kind of fed up with this interventionist foreign policy. From the Fox voter analysis, again, they're saying, look, more conservative on that, tougher on the border, let's keep it close at home. Does that surprise you, given your coverage?
Not at all. Actually, if you followed Haley around on the trail, which I did for the last couple of days, she was pushing back very strong at the accusation you hear on the net and other places that she's a warmonger and that she's a neocon and that kind of sort of stuff. And she mentions that her husband is career military, who's currently deployed right now, and that she would never, ever, last thing she would ever do is start a war or promote a war. That Trump has pushed that about her, but clearly what you see, and the reason Haley is saying that, is a lot of people in the public do oppose what they now call forever wars.
Well, they trust Trump on those issues, at least for now. Byron, Katie, thank you so much. That's it for us tonight. We're just seconds away from the last polls closing in New Hampshire. Jesse Waters has the latest results at 8 p.m. Hey, Jess.
Hey, Laura, thank you. And now we are just moments away from the final polls closing in the great state of New Hampshire. Most of the Republicans in the state have voted in the nation's first primary. 22 delegates are up for grabs. Former President Donald Trump and Nikki Haley facing off all week long, hoping to win tonight and move along and secure the Republican nomination so they can take on President Joe Biden in November. Fox News' continuing coverage of New Hampshire primaries starts now. We have a Fox News alert. It's 8 p.m. in Bedford, New Hampshire, where the polls are officially closed all across the Granite State, and the vote counting's underway. Donald Trump's entering tonight with a commanding lead in the polls, but the question is,
will Nikki Haley's campaign live or die in the live free or die state? Walking into tonight, the priority is clear. Like Iowa, a large faction of Republican voters in New Hampshire believe the country needs a complete and total upheaval. Donald Trump is seen as a vehicle for that. The top issue on the minds of Republican voters is immigration, where Donald Trump garners massive support, then followed by the economy. While the former president looks to cement his nomination in New Hampshire, President Joe Biden's name was not on the ballot today. But his supporters staged a vigorous write-in campaign that is expected to put him over the edge. And we now have a Fox News alert, a call to make. Let's bring in Martha McCallum, anchor of The Story, and Brett Baer, anchor of Special Report. Hey, guys.
Hi there. Hi, guys. Good evening, Jesse. So the last polls have closed now in New Hampshire, and the Fox News decision desk can project that President Joe Biden will win the Democratic primary here in the Granite State.
And remember, Biden's voters had to write in his name today because of a dispute between the DNC and New Hampshire over which state should go first. And he defeats rivals, including Representative Dean Phillips, the Minnesota congressman, who is likely to finish in double digits, maybe upper double digits. We'll see. He entered the race calling for a new generation of leaders.
And it's a symbolic victory because of this dispute about the order of the primaries. There are no delegates that are on the line tonight for the Democrats.
And so we want to update about the Republican race where we can characterize it. The Fox News decision desk believes former President Donald Trump has a solid lead in the Republican primary. Former Governor Nikki Haley appears to be running a somewhat closer race than some recent surveys showed going in. And that's where we are tonight. It's too early to call this race as of this hour.
Okay, so you're saying that he does have a lead, but we're not ready to call it yet because he was going into this with about an 18-point margin, according to the Real Clear Politics.
She's outperforming that, and
Okay.
we're waiting for the raw vote total to come in. As we look at our Fox News voter analysis numbers, that's the rolling poll that we take of New Hampshire voters, just like we did in Iowa. You're looking to match the raw vote total that's coming in with those numbers, and right now she's outperforming, but it still looks like the former president has a solid lead.
Characterizing exactly as a solid lead, but Haley is performing a bit stronger than we thought, and we have got about 17% of the vote in. They're about 5,000 votes apart, so just a little bit longer before we have a real solid call to make.
All right, thank you guys so much. We'll see you shortly.
Thanks, Jesse.
And the results slowly starting to trickle in. Let's go to Bill Hemmer, co-anchor of America's Newsroom, who's at the big board with the latest, and I get an up-close look at the big board.
You do, right? It's life-size, isn't it, Jesse?
It looks good.
Just listen to what Brett and Martha are trying to explain to the audience right now. This is where we are, okay? It's a margin game here. If Donald Trump is on his way to victory tonight in New Hampshire, what is the margin? You follow those tracking polls for the last week. It was really strong in those numbers, and does he hit that or not? That's a big question right now. You got 17% of the vote in, all right? Too early to call. And right now, the vote difference here puts Trump up 9 percentage points. That should seem to portend very well for his chances to win the state tonight. But if you're competing and looking down the road at Nevada and then South Carolina and Super Tuesday in early March, you know the Trump team wanted to win this in a profound way tonight with a big, big number. Is 9 points now less than that right now? Is that going to be enough for them? Or what happens with the other 80% of the estimated vote that's still out there. I can show you this now. I'm going to flip over to the Democratic side because there is a race over there. I think two things are interesting, Jesse. We believe 100,000 Democrats voted today or voted on the Democratic side, okay, whether you're a declared Democrat or whether you're undeclared as an independent. Pretty comfortable for Joe Biden, right? But he's just a tick below 60%. I was looking at this number a bit earlier today, okay? You add the raw vote total here, 13,500, 5,000, 1,000. We're a long way from knowing how many people chose to vote for Joe Biden as a write-in candidate, okay? And that's going to be very important because right now, Dean Phillips is doing all right. He's above 20%. If that number were to hold throughout the night, it might send a little bit of a shiver down some Democratic spines throughout the night and into the next contest as we move further on. And let me just show you what is in the offing here on the calendar. It's early, right? It's only January. We've only had Iowa and we've had New Hampshire. If you're the Trump team and you're looking to vanquish all of your other opponents, with Ron DeSantis dropping out 2 days ago, look what's coming your way in February. Nevada's a mess, okay? You're going to have a primary where Nikki Haley's competing. There are no delegates there awarded. Then you got a caucus 2 days later where you will have delegates awarded, and Donald Trump will compete in the caucus, okay? So that sets Trump's team up well for Nevada. Then you're going to wait about 31 days, and you're going to go back to the Palmetto State, Nikki Haley's home state. Donald Trump has performed very well there. He's got the governor's support. He's got both senators behind him, and they believe polling in South Carolina is extremely strong. So depending on what happens tonight, I'll take you back to real time here. This is the scenario. We'll get away from Democrats now. We'll go back to the Republican race. And you think about this now, okay? You know, what is the margin? Remember what Nikki Haley told us throughout the entire week here in New Hampshire. She's not getting out. Okay, but if the margin is so profound, say it's over 10 points, maybe if it goes to 15, you really make the Haley campaign think about whether or not you want to stick with this rather for another 31 days. So we'll watch this now and see how it goes. And let me just check it one more time here, Jesse. The margin's still 9 points. Okay, so it's really a test right now on the board to see what happens between these two Republicans who are the only ones left in this race as of now.
All right.
Jesse.
Bill Hemmer, thank you so much. And now Primetime has a team coverage at both campaign headquarters. Let's start with Fox News correspondent Alexis McAdams at Trump headquarters in Nashua. Alexis.
Hey, Jesse. Well, there is a party-like atmosphere here in Nashua, New Hampshire, at this location where everybody is watching closely as those polls continue to close, right? As you heard, the Fox News decision desk rather says Trump has that lead. We'll see how the rest of the night plays out here. So how confident, Jesse, is the former president in how he's going to do here in the Granite State? Well, I asked him earlier, and he said he's already talking about VP picks, right? So we talked about Vivek Ramaswamy. We talked about Byron Donald, Carrie Lake, Tim Scott expected here in the room tonight. We also just saw George Santos, Jesse, walk by a short time ago, so he wanted to be here in New Hampshire as well. It's all down to a two-person race, which is what Nikki Haley said she wanted this entire time. Now she's got it. Trump says it's not going to help her, it's going to hurt her here because he is the one who is strong on the border. And when you talk to people here in New Hampshire, Jesse, what do they care about? They tell me it's the economy and immigration. So they want somebody who is strong on the economy. They want someone who is strong on the border as well. And he thinks he has this race in the bag. And how quickly things change in politics, right? All we've heard is Trump go after DeSantis for months, calling him DeSanctus, you name it. And he said he's forgot about that, Jesse.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much. And we have a Fox News alert. We have a call to make. Let's bring in Martha McCallum, anchor of The Story, and Brett Baer, anchor of Special Report.
Well, Jesse, the Fox News decision desk can now project that former President Donald Trump will win the New Hampshire Republican primary. This is an important win for Trump, given the role that undeclared voters, moderate New England Republicans, play in this state in particular.
He defeats his only notable rival still in this race, former Governor Nikki Haley. Haley appears to be running a somewhat closer race than the recent polling had showed. Both of these candidates will receive a share of the 22 delegates at stake tonight. You have to get over 10% in order to start divvying up those delegates, and she's in that range.
And you know what's really interesting, Jesse, is that immigration, again, the top issue, Iowa and New Hampshire, and the Trump campaign was very disciplined in how they pitched that. Every rally we went to, every commercial has some mention of immigration, and they hit that hard in the final days.
It's pretty stunning that immigration has gotten to the top issue in New Hampshire. And I think you look back at all of the migration and the intentional migration that some of these governors in southern states did, sending migrants up to these more northern areas, Jesse, and it's resonating with voters up here. There's no doubt.
The other thing to watch is what the spread is here. Right now, as you see, it's about 10 points, roughly, a little bit less than that. And, you know, the question is, what does it need to be for Governor Haley to continue on? She says she's continuing on anyway, but there will be pressure, especially from Trump world, for her to do as Governor DeSantis did and step aside. Doesn't look like she's going to do that.
All right, so it looks like it's going to be about a 9 to a 15-point margin for the former president? Is that what we're looking at now? We just don't know exactly where it's going to land?
Yeah, I think that's probably a safe guess at this point, but we're still at 19% with these numbers still coming in from different areas around New Hampshire. But, you know, I mean, clearly it is a solid win. It would also be no one has won the Republican nomination, won Iowa, won New Hampshire, and not gone on to secure the nomination. So history is on the former president's side when he looks ahead at these other states. But we have heard, as everyone has said time and time again from Governor Haley, that she doesn't believe that 2 states should decide who the nominee is going to be, and that she intends to stay in this, that she intends to work hard over the next month into South Carolina. But whether or not they rethink this, given the end of the night numbers here, we'll see. She is outperforming the polls going into this day. She is doing better across the board. How that turns out at the end of the night is the big question. The other history made tonight, Jesse, is that Donald Trump is now the only person ever to win the New Hampshire primary 3 times. So there you go. I'm sure we'll hear him note that in the speech tonight. Yeah.
Always likes to break records and make history.
You know, Jesse, just one other thing that I would mention. Nikki Haley, what she's been saying all along is I was at 2% in the beginning, got to 20% in Iowa. Now you look at this number at 45. If it stays in that area, she's going to say, then I doubled what I did in Iowa. So she's going to, I would imagine, characterize this as a continued climb. And we'll see, you know, what she has to say at the end of the night and where this goes. And if the donors buy all of that. Exactly.
Okay, well, as we saw over at Hemmer's board, we still have a pretty long way to go when it comes to getting to Nevada and then getting to South Carolina. And those could be treacherous days, getting pounded over and over again by the former president. And a lot of the Republican Party looking to wrap this up and coalesce around Donald Trump. So they're healthy, motivated, and united going into a general election. But we'll see. She can make any decision she wants. It's up to Nikki Haley, and the president's been pretty gracious when he said, I'm not calling for anybody to drop out. It's their decision. Those are tough decisions, but as we know, he can be quite forgiving once someone does suspend the campaign and then endorse. It's water under the bridge. All right, now let's bring in Vivek Ramaswamy, a former presidential candidate who did drop out, endorse, and is now in the former president's good graces. Are you in Nashua right now at the party?
I am, Jesse. I'm right here at the the after party right here. And look, I think this is a decisive win for Donald Trump. That's what we're seeing tonight. I think there's actually an interesting view of this, which is it's like a terrain for the general election. You have more independents and Democrats, it looks like, voting in this GOP primary than registered Republicans themselves. And many of the largest donors to the Democratic Party have been the largest donors to Nikki Haley, who's Donald Trump's opponent here. So I think this is a prediction of what you're going to see in the general election. And the decisive margin we see tonight is in some ways, I think, something that bodes well for Trump heading into the general election in November to reunite this country. And so in my view, the general election really begins tonight. I think the Republican primary, for all intents and purposes, is over tonight. And I think the party and the country are better off if we see that for what it is.
Is Vivek Ramaswamy calling for Nikki Haley to suspend her campaign?
Look, I do think that would be the right thing for the country, unambiguously. And also just to call a spade, Jesse, as you know, I've not been unafraid to do that in this campaign. If Nikki Haley does stay in, it will send the signal that her only path and what she's playing for is for Donald Trump being eliminated by forces outside of this process, by the judicial system, by secretaries of state in places like Maine or elsewhere. And I think that's downright wrong. I think it's wrong for the Republican Party. I think it's wrong for this country. There is no viable path for her to defeat him through the front door. And so what we're really just seeing is the very people like Reid Hoffman, who are paying for the lawsuits against Donald Trump, now becoming the largest donors or among the largest donors to Nikki Haley. It becomes obvious that the thing they're playing for is Trump to be eliminated by what I view as illegitimate means. And I think that is bad for this party, bad for this country. That's what that will mean. And so for that reason, I do think the right decision for Nikki Haley to make for the country and for the Republican Party tonight or very soon after tonight is to make this a one-person nomination for the Republican nomination and then head to a general election where we can focus, I think, Jesse, this year on delivering a 1980-style moral mandate, a Reagan-style landslide when you have the likes of John Fetterman even recently talking about the importance of the southern border, that says that many Democrats and independents and libertarians agree with the views of this America First movement. That's why I took myself out of the race to endorse Donald Trump. I think the other Republicans have done the right thing. It's time for Nikki Haley to do the right thing as well and focus on a landslide this November that, dare I say, will reunite this country, and that's why I'm in this.
All right, Vivek, thank you so much. Enjoy the party. Try to behave yourself.
Thank you.
Let's now bring in Dana Perino, co-anchor of America's Newsroom, and my co-host on The Five. So, Dana, we were talking before about the expectation game, and if she was going to maybe do single digits here, then she could justify continuing, but it doesn't look like that. Maybe she squeaks out 9, but it's looking closer to 12 or 15. What's her calculation?
I think you made a good point, and something that President Trump said, right, that everybody has to make their own decision. And this, if you think about it, where she was in February was 2%, and she got it to a 2-person race, and it's not a 30-point blowout, but is it a 12 to 15% blowout, or is it a 9-point blowout? Even if it's single digits, I do think that when you look forward, it gets harder to think about how do you even mathematically make sense of that. I think something that Vivek was saying is very important for Republicans to think about. So if you're going to unite the party, it has to be, you're going to need her voters.
You are.
President Trump has done extremely well in Iowa and here in rural areas, suburban areas, softer for him. Where is she stronger? She has been stronger in the suburban areas. We saw that in both Iowa, and it looks like we're seeing that here in New Hampshire. And so I think everyone on the Republican side is going to have to say, all right, well, if we're going to get behind President Trump, like, can we all do that? Or is it just going to take a little bit of time to get there? I don't know if it can happen immediately. Also, I think New Hampshire is very strange in some ways, reflective of the country, that 40% of people say they are independent. That matches what the country says. The 43% now say they're independent. They don't want to be called Republicans or Democrats. But in different states, you have different rules. And that's not always the case. In South Carolina, you don't have to declare at all. Everybody gets to vote for whoever they want. When you go to Nevada, it's a different story. So there's a lot of different things going into this. But bottom line for Nikki Haley, she did a lot better than anyone gave her credit for last February. She got it to a 2-person race. But can she get it to a win tonight? Unlikely.
And it is a weird state. No offense to the people of New Hampshire, but in terms of your Republican primary voter, it's a New England state. It's not heavily evangelical. It's highly educated. And as you said, there are a lot of Democrats and independents getting involved in the process. So you're not going to have your Iowa voter in a place like New Hampshire. But despite that, still, if it's the 10 to 15-point margin, that seems healthy enough for people to ask Nikki Haley, maybe it's time to hang it up.
Well, and New England has been very interesting for a long time. Despite your uncle here in the great state of New Hampshire.
State Senator David Waters.
But there's been some very interesting Republicans in New England over the last couple of decades, right? Mitt Romney was one. You have Chris Sununu here in New Hampshire, is very popular. Charlie Baker of Massachusetts, also very popular. I can't remember his name. His name is Jim. He's in Vermont.
Right.
All Republicans, maybe a different flavor. They wouldn't necessarily win a primary in Iowa, but can they win in New England? And what I was just saying at the beginning is that everyone has to gather together if they expect to win one of these contests. It's going to be a tough general election fight.
It sure will be. And right now, I think we have Nikki Haley live in Concord, New Hampshire. Let's listen in.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, I love her too. What a great night. God is so good all the time. Thank you, New Hampshire, for the love, the kindness, the support, and a great night here tonight. Thank you so much. I want to first say thank you to my husband, who I know is watching right now. I love you. We're excited to have you. Thank you. I want to thank my kids who are here, Rita and Nayland and Josh, who have really kind of stepped up and just giving me the support I need. You know, you really pull on your family when something like this happens, and I am incredibly blessed by their support. I have my parents at home, and I will always say that the way they raised me, to know that we lived in the best country in the world, but to also know that the best way you appreciate your blessings is to give back. Thank you, Mom and Dad. I love you so much. To my siblings, to my in-laws, to everybody back at home, to Vicki for helping me take care of Mom and Dad. Thank you for that. You know, I will tell you, it feels like it's been a lifetime, but it has been almost a year that we've been campaigning in New Hampshire, touching every hand, answering every question, being the last person to leave. And we had the most amazing thing happen is the second that we got the endorsement from Governor Chris Sununu. I mean, a true governor that doesn't stand behind a podium. He shows up at a diner. He shows up at the brewery. He loves the people of New Hampshire. He has been with me every single day at every single event. Chris, I couldn't have done it without you. And I want to thank someone who was with me on day one. He's a patriot. He's a hardcore conservative. And he is my friend, General Don Bolduc. And Sharon, thank you so, so much. I want to congratulate Donald Trump on his victory tonight. He earned it, and I want to acknowledge that. Now, you've all heard the chatter among the political class. They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina. At one point in this campaign, there were 14 of us running. And we were at 2% in the polls. Well, I'm a fighter. And I'm scrappy. And now we're the last ones standing next to Donald Trump. And today we got close to half of the vote. We still have a ways to go, but we keep moving up. For a lot of people, politics is way too personal. It's not personal for me. I voted for Trump twice. I was proud to serve America in his cabinet. I agree with many of his policies. I decided to run because I'm worried about the future of our country and because it's time to put the negativity and chaos behind us.
All right, that was Nikki Haley not dropping out. She said New Hampshire is the first in the nation, but it is not the last. And she's going to be moving on to dozens more states. But first, her home state of South Carolina. Let's bring back in Dana Perino. Is that what you expected, Dana?
Yes, although I have to say the way she structured the speech, for a minute there I thought, wait, is she dropping out? Because she started the speech with heartfelt thanks to her parents, to her husband, to her supporters like Chris Sununu, the governor here, Don Bolduc, the general, who had been very supportive of her. And so I thought, wait, is she about to make a different announcement? But no, she says she's going to move on, and she says that she will be in a dozen more states. Now, one thing I do know about her is that she has a lot of money, right? So she's got that big infusion of cash. So campaigns, when you run out of money, that's when you run out of road. She has enough road ahead of her because she's got those funds.
All right, let's listen back in to the rest of Nikki Haley and hear what she has to say. She is breaking some news. Let's go back.
And the question is, who's going to fix it? With Donald Trump, Republicans have lost almost every competitive election. We lost the Senate. We lost the House. We lost the White House. We lost in 2018. We lost in 2020. And we lost in 2022. The worst kept secret in politics is how badly the Democrats want to run against Donald Trump. They know Trump is the only Republican in the country who Joe Biden can defeat. You can't fix the mess if you don't win an election. A Trump nomination is a Biden win and a Kamala Harris presidency. I defeat Biden handily. With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. This court case, that controversy, this tweet, that senior moment. You can't fix Joe Biden's chaos with Republican chaos. The other day, Donald Trump accused me of not providing security at the Capitol on January 6th. Now, I've long called for mental competency tests for politicians over the age of 75. Trump claims he'd do better than me in one of those tests. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But if he thinks that, then he should have no problem standing on a debate stage with me.
Okay, so she's obviously now challenging the former president to a debate. We don't believe that's ever going to happen. Let's now bring in Kayleigh McEnany, host of Outnumbered, former White House press secretary. All right, so you just heard Nikki Haley say some negative things about the former president.
The first party to retire its 80-year-old candidate is going to be the party that wins this election. And I think it should be the Republicans that win this election. So our fight is not over because we have a country to save. In the next 2 months, millions of voters in over 20 states will have their say. We should honor them and allow them to vote. And guess what? In the next 2 months, Joe Biden isn't going to get any younger or any better. We'll have all the time we need to defeat Joe Biden. When we get to South Carolina, Donald Trump's going to have a harder time falsely attacking me. The great people of South Carolina know I cut their taxes. They know They know I signed the toughest illegal immigration bill in the country. They know we passed voter ID and tort reform and ethics reform. And they know we moved 35,000 people from welfare to work. Every time I've run for office in South Carolina, I've beaten the political establishment. They're lined up against me again. That's no surprise. But South Carolina voters don't want a coronation. They want an election. And we're going to give them one. Because we are just getting started. Thank you for the energy. Thank you for the love, New Hampshire. We're going home to South Carolina. I love you too. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I want to say it's really important that I say some additional thank yous. I thanked Governor Chris Sununu and General Don and Sharon Bolduc, but I also want to mention just a few other people who've been incredibly gracious to us. To the entire Sununu family, including Governor John Sununu and Senator John E. Sununu, thank you, thank you, thank you. Senator Judd Gregg, thank you for your advice, thank you for your encouragement, and thank you for your support. I'm truly grateful. Kim Rice, thank you for being with me since the very beginning. I love you. And to Janine Cooper, Mary Mayville, Melinda Trey.
Okay, that was Nikki Haley again. Let's bring in now number co-host and former White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. For real this time, Kayleigh. Okay, so explain this to me. She just probably lost by 10 to 12. She's staying in. Possibly beyond South Carolina, it seems. What does that do to the Republican Party?
Look, she has said that she will endorse the nominee. And right now, for all intents and purposes, the presumptive nominee is Donald J. Trump. Look, he just won Iowa. He just won New Hampshire. No one's done that since going back to 1976. Only person, I believe, to ever win New Hampshire 3 times. He's currently pulling in majority support. But she's making the argument, I was at 2%. Now look at me. I'm at 46%. We'll see where that lands. I'm staring down Super Tuesday, where 11 of the 16 states allow independents to vote. But as Nate Cohn at the New York Times pointed out, if you look at each and every state to come in the latest polling in each and every state, there is not one state that has a latest poll that has Donald Trump closer than 30% as a margin. So she is staring down a nightmare of a map, but she's making the case I can win. In fact, the end of her memo, do Republicans want to win, all caps. Problem, just quickly, she made that argument on the airwaves here in New Hampshire. It didn't resonate. What landed was Trump's message on immigration and Social Security.
How can you say that the guy who's beating me and will beat me for the rest of the primary will lose the general election, and then the loser of the Republican primary, Nikki Haley, will win the general election? Because that's her argument, and I don't understand it. Do you?
So here's the case she's making. President Trump, I would go home tonight. I'd go to my victory party. I would celebrate. Yeah. I've made history yet again. But then I'd go home and I'd look under the hood. And when you look under the hood of our Fox News voter analysis data, you find that 32% of Republicans say we won't vote for Trump. I've got to unite the party. That's the argument Nikki Haley's making. And number 2, I would look. Nikki Haley won independents, according to Fox News voter analysis, 59 to 33. So I go home if I'm Trump. I celebrate. And then I say, I got to unite this party. I got to win independents. That's how I beat Biden.
Well, they do say that, and that's in the heat of the moment. This is a snapshot in January where I say, I will never vote for Donald Trump, and then maybe the feelings change come November.
Well, I must say, I know she says she's not running for second. I think this is a play for the vice presidential nomination. We must unite the Republican Party. I think she's playing for that.
All right, so you believe she's going to force the issue, drag this out, get some clout with some delegates going into the convention, and leverage her way onto the ticket?
I think that is a real possibility.
All right, well, that should be interesting. I'm not sure the Republican base is going to be thrilled about that, but politics is crazy.
Trump. They will vote for Trump no matter what.
You never know.
They will.
All right. So what contributed to this Trump win? Let's bring in Sandra Smith, co-anchor of America Report. Sandra.
Hey, Jesse, we've got some brand new data to show you really about voters and what they said about Trump's strengths, and really led to what we've seen so far tonight. As far as those MAGA supporters, we know on the ground there in New Hampshire, half of New Hampshire Republican primary voters identify as MAGA supporters. Well, look at that. Their support for Donald Trump. 87% of them voted for Trump. He also did very well with those conservative voters. As you can see here, 68% supported Donald Trump. He also did well with those without a college degree, the rural voters. 57% of them went for him. Also, a big question that we had heading into tonight was when people decided who their candidate would be. Time of decision. This is a really telling thing. Of those voters who said that they decided more than a month ago, they supported Donald Trump in this race. 6 in 10 decided more than a month ago. 69% of that group went for Donald Trump. Just a quarter of them went for Haley. Next up, another question that we have been asking voters in this Republican primary. What do they think about how the country is run and how much change they want to see? About 3 in 10 voters said that they want complete and total upheaval. And 82% of them went for Donald Trump in this race. This is even more than we saw in Iowa, where 70% of those caucus goers went for Donald Trump. One more thing about winning in November. This was obviously a very key question for voters in New Hampshire. 74% say it's very important for the Republican nominee to be able to win in November. And those voters, well, over 6 in 10 of them went for, guess it, Donald Trump, 62% of the time. So, Jesse, these are some of our key takeaways so far. We'll have more later in the night.
All right, Sandra, thank you so much. Let's now bring in Shannon Bream, host of Fox News Sunday, and Guy Benson, host of The Guy Benson Show. Shannon, this is not MAGA country here in New Hampshire. Nikki Haley outspent Donald Trump 2-1. She was here a lot more over the past year. Donald Trump basically came in the last week and campaigned very vigorously. Still, it looks like he's going to come out with about a 10 to 12, maybe 15-point advantage. What does that mean?
Well, it means that people really cared about 2 big issues, immigration and economy. They said that over and over again here, and with those groups, he killed it. The majority of those people, that was their biggest issue. They were with him. Interestingly enough, though, when you asked about the indictments and whether those were ever going to hurt him, he knew early on when somebody asked him, will you drop out if indicted? And he's like, no, it's actually going to help me. It was fine with people here. 6 in 10 here of GP voters thought that they were politically motivated. And when I was on the ground at these Trump events talking to people, they said, not only did it make me not shy away from him, it's making me double down on him.
So we're just getting some new information on some of these exit polls. We have, could be 7 to 10 point spread for Donald Trump. Maybe not 12 points, maybe 7 to 10 points. And, Guy, going into this yesterday, we were playing the expectations game. You know, Nikki Haley needs to get it within double digits to justify continuing her campaign down to South Carolina. If she's in singles, does that give her any justification?
Well, she obviously thinks so, based on her comments minutes ago. If this is a single-digit race, people were talking a lot about what does she need to do. That's her decision to make. Is there a path for her? That's the other question people were asking. I still think it is a really, really tough one if it exists, because she's 0-2 and Trump is 2-0. That's a huge difference. South Carolina, he has a big lead for now. One thing that I'm thinking about, and Kayleigh sort of touched on this a few minutes ago here on the program, I think that the Trump campaign and the Republican Party has to grapple with this reality that there are a lot of Republican voters who are not excited right now about nominating Donald Trump again. More of them are, but there's a substantial minority who are not. Those people are going to have to come into the fold at some point if the Republicans are going to win a general election. And I've seen a lot of people sort of dismissive of all these independents boosting Haley's numbers here. Well, guess who the Republicans are going to need in the fall to win? Those independents. So I think just sort of giving the back of the hand to that coalition is unwise. And I think Republicans need to look at these numbers carefully.
And the Democrats have a problem with the base, too, Shannon. It looks like about 12% of New Hampshire Democrat primary voters say they will not vote for Joe Biden if he's the nominee. And 40% of the Democrats here in the Granite State say he's too old for a second term.
So will they take a look at a President Trump as a nominee or a Nikki Haley as a nominee? That's something that she has said is a strength for her. We know in Iowa, and we know here as well, Democrats and independents really came over to her. Now, the former president, has hit her on that, saying she's bringing liberals into the party. She says, don't we want a big tent? Don't we want more people to come in? Listen, that's going to be one of her arguments to sending her to the general. I can bring people in that may not even take a look at President Trump.
And I think also we often talk about who's turning out, who are the people who comprise the electorate. What could be a decisive factor in November is who doesn't show up, who doesn't turn out, and why.
All right, Guy Benson, Shannon Bream, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Jesse.
Let's go back to Bill Hemmer, co-anchor of America's Newsroom, on the board, as we call it.
Yes, sir. Jesse, just looking at this margin right now, and it could take some time before we can determine this. This is where you stand right now, just about 840 here in New Hampshire, a difference of 8 points between Trump and Nikki Haley. Here's what I'm watching, okay? This is the Connecticut River Valley. It runs along the border with Vermont. This is Maine over here. Massachusetts down here. This is the second most populous county, Rockingham County, all of New Hampshire. You only have 7% of the vote accounted for right now in Rockingham. If I were to take you back, now we just jumped to 9% right now, and just look how close this is. If I were to take you back 8 years ago, now granted, you didn't have 2 candidates in the race, you had 10 at that time among the Republican race. Donald Trump vanquished all of them with just shy of 39% in Rockingham County. What I'm suggesting to you right now is that there's vote out there still, and there could be better news for Donald Trump. Conversely, there could be news and good news for Nikki Haley. This is Grafton County, one of the Connecticut River again here. There's a town there, Hanover. That's where Dartmouth College is located. That's where John Kasich performed really well 8 years ago. Some of these communities right along the Connecticut River, and Nikki Haley seems to be doing pretty well again with only 31% of the vote counted there in Grafton County. This is the capital city, Concord. That's Merrimack County. That's another spot in the state where John Kasich did well in 2016. Are those Nikki Haley kind of voters? Right now it appears that that's the kind of vote that Nikki Haley's picking up because she's running just about dead even with Trump there in Merrimack County. Let me come out here just for a moment here, Jesse. I'm going to put on the outstanding vote. What we're trying to figure out is what vote still needs to be counted, okay? We'll slip into the purple realm here. The remaining vote here throughout New Hampshire, it's a lot, right? I mean, the darker the shade of the purple, the more votes that have to be tabulated right now. And again, this hasn't changed since we started talking a couple minutes ago, still at 27%. So throughout the entire state of New Hampshire, you're going to have remaining vote coming in. Then ultimately, taking you there one more time, just be patient with me here, you're at 7.6%. As we evaluate this going forward, what's the margin that Donald Trump wants to get to vanquish Nikki Haley? As of her comments 10 minutes ago, she's not getting out. That means Nevada early February. That means South Carolina in 31 days. Jesse.
Bill Hemmer at the big board. Thank you so much. Let's go to Fox News contributor and former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Karl Rove. Karl, I don't know if you just heard what Kayleigh's theory was, but it's if you continue to fight Donald Trump throughout this primary, second place, second place, second place, you build up enough delegates to go into the convention in Milwaukee with some juice and maybe squeeze your way onto the ticket. Is that a legit theory?
Well, I think it is a theory. I'm not certain that depends on the mindset of the ultimate nominee of the party, and it doesn't strike me that Donald Trump is the kind of person who's going to say, yes, I'm Ronald Reagan, I'm going to pick the guy who was my preeminent challenger in order to unite the party. I just don't think that he's that kind of person. He probably is going to awaken to, needs to know the fact that he needs to unify the party, but that may be the case, but I doubt it.
All right, so for the general health of the Republican Party, if Nikki stays in and goes to South Carolina and has enough money to continue on and still get second as these days go on, does that make it harder for the eventual nominee, Donald Trump, to defeat Joe Biden?
I'm not certain. Once Donald Trump, say he succeeds in winning the nomination early, the attention is going to drop off of him. To some degree, the longer the contest goes on, a reasonable amount of time, the better off he is, because it allows him to articulate a vision for the general election. What matters is not so much, how much she says and what she's doing, as what he does. If he takes on the task of describing a general election message and positioning himself to beat Biden after winning the nomination, if he feels secure about getting the nomination, then he's going to be better off. And this is really an important point. I got the cheap whiteboard here. It's not exactly the whiteboard. Think about this in the Fox News analysis. From the start, 4 out of every 10 voters in New Hampshire said, I already know who I'm going for. I'm not going to change my mind. I knew when this whole process began. 9 out of 10 of them went for Donald Trump. The people who said, I decided during the course of the campaign, 6 out of 10 of the voters tonight, 3 out of 10 went for Trump, 6 out of 10 went for Haley, and 1 out of 10 went for somebody else. So in other words, his campaign has not really advanced him. He did better with the people who came into this contest already with their minds made up. And, that's good because he started with a high base, but it also suggests that he didn't do as well in making the case to the people over the course of the campaign. One more data point also, playing off of what Hemmer said earlier. Half of the Trump voters in the Fox News analysis said they wouldn't vote for Nikki Haley if she were the nominee of the party. And 8 out of 10 Haley voters said they wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. Now, that's in the heat of the moment, but nonetheless suggests that whoever is the Republican nominee is going to have to do a lot in unifying the party and in the temperature. And the principal responsibility is the front runner, because if you're the front runner, you're the most likely to win the nomination. So begin that job earlier, because these numbers, if I were sitting in the command post of either Trump or Haley, I'd be worried about these numbers for the general election.
That's got to be a little emotion, Carl. When you get into a fight with your girlfriend, sure. I'm never talking to her again. And then you patch things up and you guys start talking again. You're saying you don't have to do some repair work, but it's in the heat of the moment, if you know what I mean. I'm sure you've never broken up with anybody,
flowers,
Carl.
Chocolates.
No one would ever break up with you.
What was your strategy? Flowers and chocolates?
No, never flowers when you're in a fight, because that conditions her to think that you're only giving her flowers in a negative time. Okay?
Very
you want to
subtle.
save the flowers for good moments. Carl, I have so much to teach you. The architect.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. So what was Joe Biden up to today? Peter Ducey is at the White House with details. Peter.
Jesse, the president did 2 things today. He talked about abortion access, and he got heckled by pro-ceasefire in Gaza protesters. Today was the big debut for 2024 of the Democratic ticket. It's a rare side-by-side appearance with President Biden and Vice President Harris. They went out to Northern Virginia, and the president, it took way longer for the president to get his prepared remarks out, because 14 different times hecklers were shouting him down about the ceasefire in Gaza. The officials here at the Biden White House get the same polls that we all get, the top 2 issues being, for voters, being the economy and immigration. But they are choosing to try to get their base riled up by focusing on access to abortions, or what they call reproductive rights. But because President Biden chose not to be on the ballot in New Hampshire, end of 2022, he instructed the DNC, I don't want to be in a caucus like Iowa, where he came in 4th, and he thinks that there needed to be more diversity in the first primary for Democrats. He came in 5th in New Hampshire. So he put out the word. He wanted to wait, and that's what they're doing. I've been here since 10 o'clock this morning. I would never know that it was an election day until you turn on the TV and see, oh, people are voting. He didn't say anything about it. They didn't say anything about it at the press briefing. And remarkably, just as you were coming to us, his team in Wilmington, the campaign team, put out a statement. It has nothing to do with his successful write-in campaign in New Hampshire, his first win this cycle. Instead, it's just about Trump. The campaign manager says tonight's results confirm Donald Trump has all but locked up the GOP nomination, and the election-denying anti-freedom MAGA movement has completed its takeover of the Republican Party. Something else notable about President Biden's write-in campaign winning in New Hampshire: he's never won in New Hampshire before. He has tried when he's actually on the ballot. So it turns out for him, The trick might have just been not being on the ballot, asking people to write you in and hope for the best, because it worked.
Right. When Joe Biden doesn't campaign, he wins. I mean, that's the strategy. Just don't campaign,
exactly,
and you always win. Peter, how many times was he heckled during this speech today? Did you
14
say?
times.
14. 14. It sounds like a gut-filled exclamation point show, but I mean that's a lot. That's a lot of heckling. Peter,
that is a lot. And at one point he did say, "This is going to take a while. They have this planned," and he was right.
Okay. All right. Peter Ducey, thank you so much. Let's now go to Alexis McAdams, who's live from Trump headquarters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And the president should be taking the stage soon, we're hearing.
Jesse, that's right. We're waiting for the former president to get up on that stage behind me, and so is this entire room. Every 10 minutes or so, I think it gets a little bit louder in here. People are going out to the bar, getting drinks, and it's a celebration here after the former president has done it again, Jesse, this time in New Hampshire. And earlier when I checked in with him on the ground, he thought he had it in the bag. He thought, hey, it might be a two-person race with Nikki Haley, but I'm not worried about her. And I just talked with Vivek Ramaswamy, as you did too, a short time ago, and he thinks it's time for Nikki Haley to drop out and get behind Donald Trump here. He says they're just wasting time and they need to focus on going after Joe Biden in the primary. But we'll hear from the former president there on that stage behind me. Senator Tim Scott's in the room, Vivek Ramaswamy, Byron Donald, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Carrie Lake. We'll see if they all go up there on that stage with him, but definitely a celebration here. A lot of people excited about what Trump did here in the Granite State. Jesse.
All right, Alexis, give us a little perspective in terms of the excitement level. How active is the open bar? Are corks popping? How do they interpret this margin of victory?
Well, they think this is a big win. I mean, this is still going, obviously, where all these ballots are still being counted. But for it to be called at that time, people here that are Trump supporters are just so excited about it. I'm going to step out of the way just a tiny bit if I can get off screen, just so you can kind of see what the crowd looks like here on the ground. This is the area there where Trump will then take the stage, and you can kind of see how the crowd is ebbing and flowing here, but people have definitely been coming in, and once it was called, more people started getting into the room. As for bottles popping, hey, I haven't heard them just yet, but I'll keep you posted on that. But definitely a lot of people are happy here and waiting to see the former president, Justin.
Well, I think I saw Corey Lewandowski behind you, so anything could happen at any time. You just have to prepare.
That's right.
Are people getting jazzed up about the whole VP deal because he's been trotting out his endorsers, who he's forgiven, and people seem to be auditioning to a certain extent? Is the audience kind of feeling that anticipation for VP?
I mean, Vivek Ramaswamy had a bunch of people, cheering and excited to see him. And I asked Vivek, are you going to be Trump's VP? How many times people have asked him that? He wouldn't answer, but he said he's excited to help the president in any way he can. But I do think people in the crowd want to see what these people are going to say, right? They want to see Senator Tim Scott up on that stage. He was really excited last night and really trying to amp up the crowd here for President Trump. So we're probably going to see that again. But things change so quickly, right? In politics, it was only just days ago that these people were going after the former president. He was going after them. People were making fun of him and back and forth. But people forget about it, right? When you drop on and endorse him, I guess. So we'll have to see how things play out on that stage.
When Fox was airing the Nikki Haley speech and she wasn't dropping out and she said she was going to go to possibly dozens of other states, did you sense a little animosity in the room?
Well, I think people here have, all agree that if she didn't win here in New Hampshire, they don't think she's got the shot to go forward. But some things people were talking about here on the ground, some voters are saying, well, she does have a lot of money, right, that's being funneled into her campaign. She said that she has tightly watched that money and has the momentum to go into the next phase of this. We'll have to keep a close eye on how things go there. But yeah, she made it very clear, right? She's not running for VP, she's not running for second place, and she's not going anywhere.
All right. Thanks, Alexis. Let's bring in the closer.
Thanks.
Fox News chief political analyst Brit Hume. We talked the other day about the margin. What does this margin tell you, Brit Hume?
Jesse, I'm right here. You don't have to shout.
I'm a little excited about being in New Hampshire next to you. After being lectured the fact that I had my tie sticking out of my jacket, I feel like I've really not risen to the occasion, but I'm just going to forget about it.
So what does this mean?
What does this mean?
Well, the big question tonight, I think, was whether the margin Trump was going to win. That was pretty, if he hadn't, it would have been a staggering upset. But the question is whether the margin that Nikki Haley held would be sufficient to keep her going for a while. And I think it manifestly is. I mean, there were polls that had her down 11. There were one poll had her down, 16 in recent days. So, everything is about expectations at this stage. And I think she remains alive and kicking and on to the next place.
So if she continues to play second, state after state after state, and everybody calls for her to drop out, what is her rationale just knocking off second place for the next month?
Well, that could have a number of ramifications. In 1980, George H.W. Bush came into New Hampshire, having beaten Ronald Reagan in Iowa, which Reagan basically skipped, and he was the front runner. And he got beat badly here in Iowa, and he hung on in the race. He was careful about criticizing Reagan, but he did to some extent. And in the end, he ended up on the ticket. So these are the kinds of things that can happen. And Haley, you're hearing a lot of unbelievably silly talk these days about how, well, Nikki Haley is appealing to people outside the party. They're appealing to all these independents. And you're hearing people talk about, well, she's really a liberal. That's all balderdash. She's not a liberal. She's not as conservative on some issues as some would like her to be, but she's a conservative. And if she does, in fact, appeal to independents and others outside the party, she could be helpful to whoever wins, which we presume will be Trump.
Well, you say Bush the elder worked his way onto that ticket with Reagan.
He did.
By staying in and having a little juice. I floated that idea with Kayleigh to Karl Rove, and Karl Rove poo-pooed it in the way that Karl Rove does and said Donald Trump would never have his hand forced like that.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Well, the truth, look, the Republicans are a minority party in this country, right? Now, they can win elections, and they do. But they need to be able to attract support from outside the ranks of the Republican Party. And Donald Trump, while he's very strong within the Republican Party, is much weaker outside of it. And that's the reality that this season so far has shown us.
Are you telling me that Donald Trump, in order to win this election against Joe Biden, might need Nikki Haley on the ticket?
Or a candidate who has the same attributes in the sense of the ability to pull in votes from outside the base of the Republican Party.
Do we know who that person would be?
Of course not.
We don't know. And you look at some of these polls, and it's obviously very emotional. And over half of Trump voters say if Nikki is the nominee, there's no way that they would ever stomach voting for her.
That's now.
That's emotion.
Well, do you want to win the election?
I believe they do.
So these people who are for Donald Trump with all of his policies, and Nikki Haley somehow wins the nomination, they're going to vote for Biden or not vote? I don't think so.
All right, so I cannot believe on Jesse Watters Primetime we're talking about Nikki Haley being on the ticket with Donald Trump. I think, or maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
I agree.
I think we are, but
I'm just saying that
I blame Rove for it.
Staying in when you can, if you can raise the money and keep going, enlarges your profile within the party and in the country. It makes a case for the issue positions that you've taken. So there's lots of reasons to do it, even if you're not winning.
And we expect the former president to take the stage at any second. If you were advising him, what would you tell him to say after a night like this?
Well, you come in, you claim victory, you thank everybody, and you say all the good things. And then, I think it would help him if he were gracious about her. I wouldn't bet anything I own that that's going to happen. But he was gracious after winning so big in Iowa. He could afford to be gracious. She's given him a run for his money that he didn't want. He wanted what happened tonight to be a blowout win for him that would blow her out of the race. I don't think that's happened. So I don't know how gracious he's willing to be.
Okay. And he still has to take the fight to Joe Biden. He can also run the primary campaign at the same time, but keep everybody focused on defeating Joe Biden and stick to policy and be gracious. That would be the recipe.
Well, yeah, but you're a betting man. Did you bet that he would be?
I'm not a betting man. I thought there was going to be a red wave, and now look at me. All right.
Well, you're still here.
Well, I'm still here, but you've scolded me for raising my voice. I didn't get the all-star panel level that I should have had around you, Britt. Thank you so much.
Tie? It's hanging down below your belt now.
Stay with Fox for our continuing coverage of the New Hampshire primary. Thank you so much.